Chapter 881. A deal? Tsing Hui looked at the face formed from blood-red mist and thought for a moment before saying, "Why don't you tell me what you can give me, and what I can give you? I can let you understand the truth of the world and teach you how to evolve as a chaos life form. As a chaos life form, you must have a broad vision and fully understand the level of your current state. Only then can you quickly grow into a true chaos life form. If you cultivate in any other way, you can forget about becoming a true chaos life form even if you settle down for 1 billion years, 10 billion years, 100 billion years, or even 1 trillion years." The face formed from blood-red mist slowly said, "Of course, in return, I need you to obtain as much as you can. Well, in the language of the Lord of Chaos, I need you to sacrifice the blood of more divine true form and unparalleled cultivators to me. I only need cultivators of these 2 realms and below. The more the better. I believe this is a simple matter for a young chaos life form like you. Only divine true form and unparalleled cultivators?" Tsing Hui's heart skipped a beat. He did not understand what this evil god was planning. But after a while, he still said, "In the domain of the Lord of Chaos, anyone who worships an evil god will be severely punished and restricted. If I work for you, the risk is too great. On the contrary, if I directly hand over your existence to the Lord of Chaos, that might be the right choice. What do you think?" "I don't think so. As I said before, the Lord of Chaos would never sit by and watch a second chaos life form grow. Once you expose yourself to the Lord of Chaos, believe me, death is your only fate. If I were you, I would do everything I can to conceal my presence as a chaos life form as soon as possible, or flee this domain as far as I can. Of course, fleeing this domain is not advisable because there are simply too many chaos life forms roaming this domain. Hundreds of them, young chaos life forms like you, would not be able to escape the fate of death once exposed to other chaos life forms. Therefore, what you should do is hide yourself well until the day you complete your transformation and become a true chaos life form." Tsing Hui listened to the evil god. Although he did not know whether the Lord of Chaos's attitude towards chaos life forms was true or false, he at least obtained a very useful piece of information. And that was, there were many chaos life forms roaming this domain, hundreds of them. These chaos life forms should be the evil gods that ordinary people spoke of. It was probably because of these evil gods that the Lord of Chaos, the Lord of Time, and the Master of God's attention were diverted from this domain, preventing the evil gods from spying on this domain. The most dangerous place was the safest place. The principle of darkness under a lamp existed in any environment. If this evil god was telling the truth, then temporarily disguising himself as a ruler and hiding in the domain of the Lord of Chaos was indeed the safest thing to do. As for complaining to the Lord of Chaos, he only dared to say such words. The 2 pieces of creation jade that should have been in the hands of the Lord of Chaos were actually in his possession. Who knew what had happened during this period? Once he exposed himself to the Lord of Chaos, it was absolutely unknown whether he could keep these pieces of creation jade. He did not dare to take such a risk. At this moment, the evil god that had been silent for a long time spoke again after seeing Tsing Hui. "Although I've paid a lot of Dao-carrying items as compensation, you've also helped me a lot and allowed me to recover some of my vitality. Therefore, to thank you and to show my sincerity before we work together, I can first give you some information about the growth of chaos life forms, basic methods of growth, and some descriptions of the environment outside this domain." As soon as the face formed from blood-colored mist finished speaking, a divine consciousness was projected. Qing Su glanced at the soul sense carefully. Only when he sensed that it was a simple message through the senses of the soul did he accept it. He digested the information within. "This is my advance payment. If you want more information, then provide me with 1 million Maverick Realm offerings and 100 million Divine True Form Realm offerings. That shouldn't be difficult for you. In addition, if you don't believe the external environment I've described, you can ask a creature you trust about the dangers you might encounter after leaving this domain. Then, you'll understand how fortunate it is to have a chaos life form lead the way for you. Little fellow, I'll wait for you to make the right choice." After the face formed by the bloody mist finished speaking, it began to shrink inwards. Not long after, the bloody mist had returned to the bloody statue. At the same time, it repaired the bloody statue that had some cracks. However, although the bloody statue was repaired, its size had decreased slightly. It was around 10 meters tall, but now it was only 9.5 meters tall. Clearly, Sing Hui's series of attacks had caused considerable damage to the statue. Information about the growth of chaos life forms, basic methods of growth, and some descriptions of the environment outside this domain. Sing Hui carefully sensed the information in his mind. Soon, however, he opened his eyes in disbelief. That's impossible. The difference between an adult chaos life form and an underage one is so huge. That's more than 10,000 times. After a while, he calmed down slightly and scanned the other information. The theory of the 6 realms of chaos is, in fact, not a theory passed down by the Master of Chaos. According to the theory passed down by the Master of Chaos, there are only 3 realms above the divine realm. They are the first level of the Great Way's blessing, the second level of the immemorial sacred body, and the third level of the immemorial sacred body. The 4th, 5th, and even the 6th level of the chaotic realm are based on the information passed down by the evil gods according to the cultivation system of this world and then integrated by the predecessors. In this theory, the evil gods are divided into ordinary evil gods and powerful evil gods, corresponding to the 4th and 5th levels of the chaotic realm respectively. Above them are the most powerful peak existences, which are the Master of Chaos, the Master of Time, and the Master of Gods. These 3 great existences stand at the top of all the evil gods. Sing Hui summarized the information given by the evil god and had a clear understanding of the power division of the 6 realms of chaos. The only thing that surprised him was the difference between the 3rd level of Chaos Realm and the 4th level of Chaos Realm. It couldn't even be called 2 realms anymore. The difference between these 2 realms was almost comparable to the difference between the Longevity Realm and the Dominion Realm, or the Celestial Phenomenon Realm and the Chaotic Supreme Realm. It was completely the difference between heaven and earth. I can refer to these cultivation methods, but I can't completely believe them. I'll go to the Immortal Tao civilization and ask the Lord of Many Treasures. Maybe I can get some useful information from him. Sing Hui thought. He didn't dare to try the cultivation method of this evil god. He had to go to the Immortal Tao civilization and ask someone to study it before coming to a conclusion. Sing Hui's figure flashed again and appeared in the Void Sword Pavilion. He directly summoned the 2 elders, Floating Light and Sweeping Shadow. Compared to the politeness on the surface but the arrogance on the inside, the 2 great elders, Floating Light and Sweeping Shadow, had already submitted willingly to Qing Su. They dared not show any disrespect or slight towards him. How long will it take for the Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion to come? This? Due to the obstruction of the transmission array between the Divine Wilderness Great World and the True Sun Great World, it will probably take another 150 to 180 years to completely reach the Divine Wilderness Great World. Well, my cultivation has just broken through and I still need to find a secret place to retreat. Before I come out, I hope that the Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion can temporarily take care of the Divine Wilderness Great World for me, in order to prevent any ignorant rulers from having designs on the Divine Wilderness Great World. Sing Hui said. If Sing Hui dared to ask the Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion to wait for him, the 2 great elders would definitely oppose it immediately. However, thinking of the void chasm that spanned across the Divine Wilderness Great World, the 2 great elders didn't have the courage to resist. Instead, they respectfully said, "Please rest assured, Sir Sing Hui. When the time comes, I will tell the Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion to come. As long as it's not too long, the Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion will definitely not mind protecting the Divine Wilderness Great World. It shouldn't be too long. Let's set it at 1,000 years. 1,000 years. This period of time was considered long for ordinary cultivators, but for supreme existences who had reached the Chaos Realm, it was not too long. After all, most of the Chaos Realm's supreme existences had lived for more than 100,000 years. 1,000 years was equivalent to less than a year for mortals. It was not too long to wait for a powerful expert. Yes, we will tell the Sword Master of the Void Sword Pavilion. Well, I hope the cooperation between the Hunyuan Sword Sect and the Void Sword Pavilion can continue. Sing Hui added. Then, without wasting any more time, his figure flashed. Accompanied by layers of spatial laws, he had already arrived on the Fortune Continent. On the Fortune Continent, Immortal Emperor Songhai was studying the teleportation divine array. When he saw Tsing Hui arrive, he sighed sincerely. Sir Tsing Hui, you're here? The person who set up this formation is definitely a top-notch almighty in our immortal Dao civilization. They are at least heavenly monarchs and quasi-saints. It might even be the work of a saint. If I can fully comprehend this formation, we will have the ability to set up ultra-long-distance teleportation formations. At that time, we will be able to attack and retreat more freely. It's good that it's useful to Immortal Emperor Songhai. Tsing Hui nodded slightly. Immortal Emperor Songhai, I will go to the Jade Dragon soaring victorious sky again. Immortal Emperor Songhai, please activate the teleportation array. I should be gone for 1,000 years. After 1,000 years, please activate the teleportation array again and bring me back. Okay, but 1,000 years, isn't it a little short? Immortal Emperor Songhai knew that Tsing Hui was cultivating with the heavenly monarch of plentiful treasures. In his opinion, the more such a precious opportunity, the better. 1,000 years is not short. If I can make some achievements in 1,000 years, then I will naturally have made some progress. If I don't make any progress, then there is probably not much point in continuing to cultivate. Tsing Hui said. He did not want to be like the ordinary great mediums who relied on the accumulation of endless years to increase his cultivation base bit by bit. After cultivating for 1,000 years, once his progress began to slow down, he would leave the primal chaos void and think of another way. Immortal Emperor Songhai did not say anything more and nodded. Then I will activate the teleportation array and send you back. Chapter 882. A Jade Dragon Soared into the Heavens. Tsing Hui appeared outside Exalted Heaven once more. It didn't take him too long to leave the immortal Dao civilization and return to the divine wilderness great world. On the surface, the immortal Dao civilization appeared calm and peaceful. Of course, even if some cultivators below Grand Unity Immortal encountered danger, perished, or were besieged, it wouldn't reach Tsing Hui's level. Unless it concerned the life and death of a large number of Grand Luo Immortals, the immortal Dao civilization had the ability to resolve such problems on their own. Done with the instructions? The heavenly lord of myriad treasures who was waiting here saw Qing Su and said to him, Tsing Hui nodded and went straight to the point. When I returned to the divine wilderness great world this time, I discovered something unusual. Something unusual? An evil god. An evil god. The heavenly lord of myriad treasures' expression turned solemn. An evil god is a peak existence in the chaos void, the greatest existence. It's on the same level as the Lord of Chaos, the Lord of Time, the Lord of Gods, and other pinnacle life forms. The only difference is strength. At our current level, it's best if we don't interact with such a being as much as possible. His strength, vision, knowledge, and schemes are all beyond our imagination. If we're careless, we'll be toyed with in the palm of his hand. Moreover, compared to cultivators like us, their losses are just the tip of the iceberg if their scheme fails. As for us, if we fall into their scheme, we'll pay with our lives. Try not to interact with him as much as possible, but now. I'm afraid we've already made contact. As Qing Su said that, he explained the simple deal he made with the evil god. This evil god needs divine true bodies and reigning realm cultivators as blood sacrifices. What's the logic behind this? Although divine true bodies and reigning realms are equivalent to the cornerstones of civilization wars, they're not worth mentioning to great life forms like the evil god. If they're willing, they can rely on their own abilities to cultivate tens of thousands of divine true bodies and reigning realms in an extremely short period of time. What's the point of sacrificing at this level? Even a first-level Chaos Realm cultivator might not be interested in it, right? The heavenly lord of myriad treasures was somewhat puzzled. This is the information that the evil god gave me about the Chaos Void and the basic cultivation method for chaos creatures. This cultivation method can help me grow to the critical point of becoming a true chaos creature, which is the peak level of a great medium. As for the trick to becoming a true chaos creature, it doesn't mention anything about it. Cultivation techniques of chaos beings and information about the chaos void? We have the information of the battle of annihilation here. We can use this information to determine the authenticity of the information. As for the chaos incantation, I can't give you much help. After all, we've never really killed a chaos life form or captured one. At this point, the Lord of Myriad Treasures paused for a moment. There's one more thing. According to our understanding, chaos life forms should have two forms. The Lord of Chaos is a true chaos life form, while the Lord of Time and the Lord of Gods aren't chaos life forms. They're supreme existences called creation life forms. Primal chaos, creation? Sing Hui thought back to the information he'd received. They weren't mentioned in this information. Yes, and according to what I know, there's a huge difference between creation life forms and chaos life forms. Chaos life forms possess enormous bodies that exceed our imagination, and their only disadvantage is that they can't shift easily. According to the information passed down from the Battle of Annihilation, our immortal Tao civilization could barely hold out against these invaders at the start of the war. However, with the arrival of the Lord of Chaos, he used his enormous body to obscure our entire world and attract more than 90% of the attacks. That gave the Lord of Time, the Lord of Gods, and the other evil gods the opportunity to break through our defenses and lead to our total defeat. Attract 90% of the attacks? Sing Hui found it hard to believe. The Lord of Time, the Lord of Gods, and the other evil gods couldn't break through our defenses even when they joined forces, but the Lord of Chaos alone could block 90% of our attacks? Is the Lord of Chaos that powerful? I've said before that chaos life forms are so massive that it's not difficult for us great beings to destroy billions or even tens of billions of kilometers in a single blow. If we could mobilize the great Tao, our destructive power would be even greater, and that goes without saying for the great saints above us. But, can you imagine the terror of a life form that's hundreds or trillions of light years in size? We can destroy countless worlds and shatter billions of stars with a single blow, but chaos life forms can replicate billions or even trillions of stars with their own unique characteristics. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures' expression was full of gloom at that. The world that our immortal Tao civilization relies on ultimately only possesses a basic consciousness. How could we concentrate all our power on a single point to attack the Lord of Chaos's massive world? The Lord of Chaos is invincible against beings at the level of chaos, creation, and evil gods. Invincible. Sing Hui thought about the Lord of Plentiful Treasures' description of the Lord of Chaos's size, as well as the speed at which it kept recovering. That it was certainly an opponent that made one feel despair. Aside from the fact that he couldn't move, he had no other shortcomings. He could withstand 90% of the immortal Tao civilization's firepower and still be alive and kicking. It was no wonder that the Lord of Chaos could still occupy such a vast territory after the immortal Tao civilization had been defeated. Even the Lord of Time, the Lord of Gods, and other beings on the same level as him couldn't do anything to him. The Lord of Time and the Lord of Gods may be attacking the Lord of Chaos right now and forcing him to retreat, but how can you tell if this is the Lord of Chaos trying to shrink his size? After all, being too big means that it's difficult to move. If we discover another chaotic universe rich in resources, the Lord of Chaos might not even be in the picture. Sing Hui could vaguely sense a hint of despair in the Lord of Plentiful Treasures' words. Which of those who could cultivate to the level of great beings wasn't a dragon among men? Which of them wasn't a peerless genius? Any of them could write an epic legend with their life experiences. But in front of the Lord of Chaos, even a heavenly lord was so insignificant. It was like asking a human who just left the Stone Age to destroy the sun in the firmament. The difficulty was so great that it was suffocating, so suffocating that it made one despair. Even if the Lord of Plentiful Treasures was thrown into the Lord of Chaos body and had him attack day and night for 1,000,000 years, 10,000,000 years, or even 100,000,000 years, he wouldn't even be able to make the Lord of Chaos realize that he was under attack, much less injure him. This was the strength of the Lord of Chaos. This was also the reason why the Lord of Plentiful Treasures didn't dare to hope that he could expel the Lord of Time, the Lord of Chaos, and the Lord of Gods and restore the glory of the heavenly Tao civilization. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures noticed Xing Hui's abnormality and also felt that he had lost his composure. He immediately changed the topic. The information that the evil god gave you about the environment of the chaotic void should be true. At present, there are probably dozens of powerful creation life forms roaming outside our universe. There are quite a lot of them, but it shouldn't be more than 100. The Lord of Chaos can't do anything to those creation life forms, but it doesn't mean that the Lord of Time and the Lord of Gods are the same. These two pinnacle existences belong to the category of creation life forms, and they're the pinnacle of creation life forms. These creation life forms have the ability to kill other creation life forms, so I think they definitely won't allow too many creation life forms to covet them outside. The ratio of creation life forms to chaos life forms is usually 10 to 1. Under such circumstances, the number of top experts in the periphery of the chaotic void should be around 30 to 40. 30 to 40. The place I'm going to take you to next is actually a territory radiated by the Lord of Chaos's power. The Lord of Chaos is enormous, and in order to invade our immortal Tao civilization, he expanded his body to a level beyond what he could control. Even though he's been shrinking his body over the years and constantly causing worlds to collapse, he still can't completely recover in a short period of time. We just need to find a large world near extinction and enter the chaotic void from there to ensure that we'll be safe. If we really sense danger, we can just hide inside the Lord of Chaos. As long as our luck isn't too bad and we're not detected by the Lord of Chaos, we shouldn't run into any danger. Hide inside the Lord of Chaos? Won't that alarm the Lord of Chaos? Xing Hui's expression was a little strange. The Lord of Myriad Treasures chuckled. To the Lord of Chaos, our bodies aren't even ants. The Lord of Chaos won't be able to detect our presence at all. Besides, even if he does, so what? It takes about 0.3 to 0.5 seconds for you to look straight ahead and shift your gaze to your toes. But to the Lord of Chaos, whose body is unimaginably huge, it'll take at least a few years for him to shift his consciousness to where you are, as long as he doesn't happen to be paying attention to this area. A few years for him to shift his gaze? How long does it take for a human to turn around? How long does it take for a star to make half a revolution? How long does it take for a galaxy to make half a revolution? Not to mention the Lord of Chaos, who's even bigger than a galaxy or a universe. The Lord of Myriad Treasures pointed at his head. Don't use our eyes to measure life forms above the 4th level of the Chaos realm. All right, let's not delay any further. Let's set off now. Xing Hui nodded. At the same time, he understood that he had to gradually change his point of view. The small world of a cultivator at the boundary realm with a single thought was 10,000 kilometers long. A chaotic realm's small world could reach up to 1,000,000 kilometers long. Logically speaking, the small world of a dominator or a great magician should be 100 million or 10 billion kilometers long. Assuming that a 4th-level Chaos Realm cultivator was only 10,000 times stronger than a great magician, their small world should reach up to 10 trillion kilometers long. What's more, the value he calculated was obviously theoretical. After eliminating these thoughts, Xing Hui quickly followed the Lord of Myriad Treasures and quickly moved closer to the territory occupied by the Lord of Chaos. 10 years later, the two of them stopped in a barren world near the territory of the Lord of Chaos. With this world as a foundation, the two of them began to move toward the depths of the Chaos Void. This continued for another year. As the environmental pressure around them continued to increase, when the pressure reached a limit, the two of them suddenly moved and arrived at a completely different world. The moment the two of them appeared in this world, an endless stream of chaos chi purer than that of the great overarching heavens surged toward them, constantly oppressing their true bodies. They had arrived at the true Chaos Void. Chapter 883. Compared to the Chaos Void simulated by Exalted Major, the real Chaos Void was far more terrifying. Xing Hui had spent 10 years in Exalted Major's Elysium Gate and thought he'd adapted to the special environment of the Chaos Void, but now it seemed that he'd been a little too confident. This is as far as I can send you. You'll have to rely on yourself for the rest of the time. Chaos beings like you can quickly adapt to the chaos void after living here for a while, but we can't. Therefore, after sending you here and teaching you the way, it's time for me to return. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures said. This will do. Be careful. Although this place is close to the body of the Lord of Chaos and is shielded by his power, you still have to guard against detection. In addition, I'll do my best to gather information about the evil god in your body. I hope I'll be able to obtain useful information when the time comes. Gather information? Sing Huey's heart skipped a beat. The Lord of Myriad Treasures smiled mysteriously. The immortal Tao civilization is hated by everyone, but since the Lord of Primal Chaos can't have absolute control over the territory his power radiates, many great masters are in contact with us. Moreover, those who contact us are often those who stand at the pinnacle of the great masters, apex existences who have no room for improvement and no room for training. They know far more secrets than ordinary great masters, and they are willing to express their goodwill to us, hoping to borrow our unique system to break their shackles so that they can one day peek into the realm of creation and the mysteries of primal chaos lifeforms. Sing Hui nodded. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures explained a few more things and quickly left. It was only after the Lord of Plentiful Treasures left that Sing Hui's gaze fell on the formula for cultivating chaos beings. The formula was divided into 4 stages. The first stage was to create the foundation of chaos. There were 2 ways to create the foundation of chaos beings. One was to possess the bloodline of a chaos being, or to be a direct descendant of a chaos being. The other was to possess one's own unique laws of the Great Tao. Sing Hui was currently in this stage. As for the second stage, it was to trace one's origin through one's own bloodline. Since the origin of chaos life came from true chaos life forms, their form must be equivalent to a vast chaos universe. The second stage required the cultivator to trace back to the origin, which meant that the cultivator had to simulate a chaos universe, a universe that could contain and refine chaos yuan qi. The second stage would begin when the chaos yuan qi was formed. The third phase required the chaos lifeforms to condense the entire simulated chaotic universe into a genesis point, breaking the shackles between reality and illusion to create something out of nothing, turning the illusory into reality and condensing the illusory chaotic universe into a genesis point that truly existed. As for the fourth stage, it was to detonate the quintessence and form a true chaosverse. The moment the chaosverse was formed would be the day the chaos lifeforms truly matured. However, the formula given by the evil god didn't mention this stage, so it was clear that he'd kept it. This really is a cultivation method for chaos beings. But I'm not a chaos being, nor am I a descendant of a chaos being. If I cultivate this step by step, I might not be able to achieve anything. Even if I do, the effects will be very slow. Moreover, I don't know if the evil god has tampered with this formula, so for safety's sake. With that in mind, Qing Su directly projected the cultivation method into the Fortune Jade. Using the wonders of the Fortune Jade, he derived a cultivation method that completely belonged to him. Since Qing Su had provided him with the complete cultivation method of the chaotic beings, coupled with the fact that his own great Tao of unity had been derived from the Fortune Jade, he was vaguely close to the first level of this chaotic method. As a result, the Fortune Jade had completed the derivation of the first level of this brand new method in less than 10 years. However, when it came to the second stage, Sing Hui frowned slightly. The efficiency of the second stage was extremely slow. Qing Su estimated that if there were no external interference or if he did not complete the Fortune Jade, it would take him several 100,000 or even 1,000,000 years at the very least to derive the second and third layer of the technique with his current level of deduction. Compared to ordinary Chaos Supremes, this wasn't a short period of time and could even be considered fast. However, Sing Hui obviously didn't want to wait until then. Perhaps it's not right to rely solely on the Fortune Jade to derive a formula that suits me. I have to add in my own understanding and conception. Sing Hui pondered. Understanding and conception. It was in line with chaos beings, or rather, it was in line with the true understanding and conception of the chaos realm. Sing Hui raised his head and looked behind him. Behind him was an unimaginably vast starry sky. He stood there like a mortal looking up at the endless galaxy. It was boundless and filled with awe from the bottom of his heart. However, he couldn't give a reason to the Milky Way. This was because the difference between the two was too great. It was like how primitive humans couldn't describe the form of the Earth's existence. Since I want to become a chaos being, then my conception can't be below that of a chaos being. If I want to reach the realm of the Master of Chaos one day, my conception has to be close to the Master of Chaos. Sing Hui fell silent. Conception to be close to the Master of Chaos? He couldn't even see the true form of the Master of Chaos, let alone understand it. How could he have the conception to be close to the Master of Chaos? Wait a minute. I can't see the true form of the Master of Chaos, and I can't understand the form of existence of the Master of Chaos, but some memories in my mind may not be inferior to the Master of Chaos. Sing Hui thought back to the first time he met the Seven-Star Sword Spirit. With the help of the Seven-Star Sword Spirit, he had coincidentally derived a dream. In the dream, he felt that he had transformed into the agent of a great will so vast that words couldn't describe it. He was inspecting a world that spanned tens of millions of light years. The circulation of the world's vitality, the rise and fall of the sun and the setting of the moon, the 6 paths of reincarnation, everything was under his supervision and control. Although that feeling didn't last for long, it really did exist. Sing Hui closed his eyes and carefully recalled that strange dream that felt incomparably real but also full of illusions. At the end of the dream, the unimaginably vast great will was torn apart by countless more terrifying forces. A kind of apocalyptic aura that felt like the heavens were falling and the earth was rending, and all living things were sinking into oblivion filled the entire world. Countless shooting stars rose slowly and collided with the terrifying wills from the outside world, sputtering dazzling sparks. In the end, the will of heaven collapsed, and an unprecedented panic and fear spread throughout his body. That feeling, it was so real. It was as if, I am heaven's will. I am heaven's will, Sing Hui muttered to himself. As he carefully thought about it, he could even clearly recall the pain of being torn apart by several vast forces. In this dream, there were no images, no material objects. Everything was filled with a gray fog. He could only feel prosperity, exhaustion, satisfaction, shock, fear, despair, and other emotions. Especially in the later stages, these emotions that seemed to originate from the depths of his soul constantly tortured him, almost driving him crazy. However, like a person who had fallen into a nightmare, no matter how much he struggled, how much he roared, how much he screamed, the feelings of fear and despair always wrapped around him, lingering around him, as if they wanted to drag him down, 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 and down until he was beyond redemption. Puff, puff, puff. Sing Hui's breathing unconsciously became heavy. He constantly panted, as if his memories were being replayed, as if he was truly in the midst of that terrifying scene. This is the scene of the immortal Dao civilization being defeated, or the heavenly Dao being torn apart. I must have resonated with the creation jade under some special circumstances, and with the help of the jade, I was able to see the details of this battle in the form of a dream, and those majestic forces that tore apart the heavenly Dao must be. Sing Hui's thoughts rapidly traced back to the depths of the dream, directly fixing the scene of heavens while being torn apart. Then, through those forces that tore apart heaven's will, finally, he saw the true forms of those mighty existences. Enormous. Indescribably enormous. It was as if a dark cloud had blotted out the sky, and the entire world was obscured by an enormous chaotic universe. He could understand that he was currently in the vision of heaven's will. In other words, he was equivalent to the heavenly Tao at this moment, using it to observe these mighty beings. Even so, the terrifying figure in front of him was still 100 times larger than he was. However, in addition to this majestic realm that constantly crushed the heavenly Tao, there were two other realms that were seeping into heaven's will through certain cracks. These two realms were much smaller than the massive realm and even Sing Hui himself, but they were incomparably nimble. Their attacks were completely unrestricted by the laws of space, making them impossible to guard against and unstoppable. In addition to these three mighty existences, there were many other smaller chaotic universes. Under the attacks of these terrifying beings, Heaven's will was finally torn apart, and it was forced to self-destruct. While severely injuring the invaders, it preserved the sparks of countless civilizations and scattered them in all directions, in the hopes that one day, there would be beings who could pick up these sparks and restore the lost glory of the immortal Tao civilization. The Lord of Chaos, the Lord of Time, the Lord of Gods. Sing Hui's mind constantly recalled the scenes of the three mighty existences that he had seen. A moment later, his thoughts turned to the time when he had become Heaven's will and controlled the circulation of the world's Yuan Qi, the rise and fall of the sun, and the 6 paths of reincarnation. And so, 3 years later, the concept in Sing Hui's mind was finally formed. At this moment, many of his comprehensions were simultaneously reflected in the Fortune Jade, and with the Fortune Jade as the foundation, he began to deduce. It was as if all of these were the experiences of the Fortune Jade, as if what he intended to do now was to raise the sparks of the immortal Tao civilization and restore its glory. This time, the Fortune Jade's deduction efficiency was unbelievably fast. 10 years. In less than 10 years, this brand new cultivation technique had been deduced. A technique that led directly to the primordial chaos appeared before his eyes. Chapter 884. It's finally done. Sing Hui murmured to himself. His gaze landed on the formula. The second step of the formula the evil god had given him was to create a simulated universe, while the third step was to create the origin of chaos. As for how to transform into a true chaos being, the evil god had kept it a secret and hadn't described it. This brand new technique uses my coalescence Great Tao as the foundation. I only need to refine my coalescence Great Tao to complete my cultivation. The second step uses the creation Godly Jade as the foundation to simulate the heavenly Tao world of the immortal Tao civilization, which has long been shattered and perished. There are 3,000 great Taos in the immortal Tao civilization. When I complete these 3,000 great Taos, this brand new world is equivalent to completing the simulation. After the simulation of this world is complete, I will trace back to the source of chaos. The source of chaos of the immortal Tao civilization is. A sharp light flashed through Tsing Hui's eyes. The disk. The origin of chaos of the immortal Tao civilization was the disk. It was the disk's existence that had opened up the entire world and given birth to the immortal Tao civilization. The disk that seemed to be the ultimate eternity. Hadn't the Lord of Chaos, Lord of Time, and Lord of Gods done everything in their power to invade the immortal Tao civilization in order to trace back the origin of chaos' eternal footsteps and challenge the ultimate realm of legend? If he could really condense the chaos origin of the immortal Tao civilization, the plate, and use it as the origin to ascend into a true chaos life form, he would probably resonate with the shattered immortal Tao civilization the moment his world was formed and fuse it into his own world. When the time came, he would do what the Lord of Chaos, the Lord of Gods, and the Lord of Time could not. He would fuse the plate's footprint and face the true essence of eternity. The 3,000 Great Taos. I can start with the broken ancient Great Taos, but the origin disk is a big problem, but it's not like there's no way around it. Didn't the Lord of Chaos create the 12 divine beasts to recreate Pangu's true form? The origin disk I need to recreate isn't the true form of Pangu, so I don't need to kill the 12 divine beasts. All I need to do is obtain their essence blood or devour a portion of their great Tao to recreate the origin disk. With the origin disk as the foundation, I can create a world and become a true chaos being. Once I become a true chaos being and resonate with the immortal Tao civilization, it won't be too late for me to compete with the Lord of Chaos and complete the great Tao. Thinking of this, Sing Hui had a clear understanding of his future path of cultivation. This technique of his relied on some external forces. In the words of the immortal Tao civilization, it was similar to becoming a saint through virtue. However, compared to the virtuous saints of the immortal Tao civilization, Sing Hui's own merits were simply too great. Rebuilding the immortal Tao civilization was not something that could be bestowed by the immortal Tao civilization. At best, he had borrowed the power of the immortal Tao civilization to greatly reduce the difficulty of becoming a true chaos being. It's a pity that this technique relies too heavily on the Fortune Divine Jade and even the immortal Tao civilization. It's not very popular, so there's not much meaning in spreading it. Xing Hui felt a little regretful. However, a moment later, he smiled. Every true chaos being was the greatest life form in the endless chaos. Their accomplishments were all blessed by the heavens, and it was only when billions of coincidences connected that a chaos being was born. If this technique could be popularized, the chaos beings and creation beings in the chaos would have been overrun by a disaster long ago. It was only normal that the technique couldn't be popularized, but it would have been strange if it could. This new technique uses the great Tao of unity as a guide to manifest a world by tracing back to the Pangogenesis point. Then, let's call it the Great Tao Plate. Xing Hui murmured, confirming his cultivation method. The second step of the Great Tao Plate is to refine the 3,000 Great Taos. My Great Tao of Unity will lead the newly formed 3,000 Great Taos. Only then will I be able to keep the initiative. Just like how the many stars in the Milky Way are revered by the black hole in their silver hearts, they rely on the power of the black hole to keep the galaxy from falling. The 3,000 Great Taos I want to refine should be the same. Since Great Tao of Unity is to lead, it must be continuously refined, until it can maintain the balance of the 3,000 Great Taos. A thought crossed Qing Su's mind. With a clear path of cultivation, he calmed down and began to use the unique cultivation environment of the chaotic space to constantly refine his way of uniting. As he refined his way of uniting, he constantly used the power of the Fortune Jade to complete the Disk of Ways, making it even more compatible with his way of uniting. Time flowed by amidst this somewhat dull cultivation. 1,000 years passed in the blink of an eye. The refinement of the coalescence Great Tao is almost complete. At this moment, perhaps I can be considered a true great divine ability. Xing Hui sensed the changes in his body. A moment later, he lifted his head and gazed at the enormous being in front of him. It was the Master of Chaos. He'd sized up the Master of Chaos's enormous body more than once in the past 1,000 years, but every time he saw the great being's body, he was shaken from the bottom of his heart. One day, I'll reach your level. Xing Hui murmured. He took a step forward and headed toward the territory occupied by the Master of Chaos. As he traveled, Xing Hui fully utilized the existence and non-existence of his Great Tao of Unity. Under such circumstances, the laws of the Great Tao of Unity couldn't interfere with his existence. It was as if he was moving through a vacuum, gaining almost infinite speed. In less than a year, he'd surpassed the Heavenly Lord of myriad treasures. 3 years later, the Jade Dragon soaring through the heavens where the immortal Tao civilization was located wasn't far from him. He had no choice but to spend a year in advance to reduce his speed. Only 5 years had passed by the time he truly appeared in the Jade Dragon soaring through the heavens. This speed was twice as fast as the Heavenly Lord of myriad treasures. After 1,000 years, Xing Hui once again stepped into the Jade Dragon soaring through the heavens. However, as soon as he stepped into Jade Dragon soaring victorious heavens, he vaguely felt that there was something wrong with the atmosphere. The Jade Dragon soaring through the heavens seemed to be in the midst of war preparations. True Immortals, Grand Unity Immortals, and even Grand Luo Immortals were constantly shuttling and preparing. They were either already on the move or in the midst of preparing. Xing Hui flew for a while and soon saw a familiar face. Immortal Emperor Yu Luo, please wait. Immortal Lord Xing Hui. No, I should call you Immortal Emperor Xing Hui now. You're back. Have you ended your seclusion? Immortal Emperor Yu Luo was one of the immortal emperors who'd held a meeting with the Heavenly Lord of myriad treasures and the others to fully support Xing Hui. It was precisely because of this that he'd responded in such a manner upon seeing Xing Hui. From now on, I can't rely on seclusion to increase my cultivation. I'll have to constantly comprehend the 3,000 Great Taos. Xing Hui gave a simple reply and went straight to the point. I feel that the atmosphere in the Jade Dragon soaring through the heavens isn't right. Did something happen? Indeed, something has happened. Our immortal Tao civilization has been targeted by a divine sovereign. A divine sovereign? Tsing Hui's expression turned serious. Divine Sovereign was a title that came from the Master of God's faction. The Master of God's faction divided the gods into true gods, lesser gods, intermediate gods, and greater gods, which corresponded to the Master of Chaos faction's world creation with a thought and greater gods. However, there was a special structure among these stages, and that was a divine system formed by many gods working together. The master of a divine system had at least the combat strength of an intermediate god, and most of them were equivalent to a greater god. The master of such a divine system was a greater god and was respectfully called a divine king. If the divine system was extremely large and had more than one greater god, the master of the divine system would be respectfully called a divine sovereign. Under such circumstances, once a battle with a divine sovereign began, it didn't mean that they only had to deal with a divine sovereign equivalent to a level 21 divine sovereign. They often had to deal with the entire divine system, including that divine sovereign. A divine sovereign was already extremely powerful, and in addition to being able to borrow part of the power of the other gods in the divine system, it made them even stronger. It was precisely because of the divine system structure that the Master of God's faction could still fight against the greater gods of the Master of Chaos faction, even though they had fewer top experts than the Master of Chaos faction. Yu Luo Immortal Emperor nodded and said with a somewhat gloomy expression, although the Master of Chaos, Master of Gods, and Master of Times factions level 21 existences won't deliberately kill us, we're actually just fattened sheep to those supreme experts among them. Once they need a top divine artifact, or if any of their descendants want to break through to a critical realm and lack enough merit points to exchange for cultivation resources, they'll start a war against us and kill most of our experts. Every time, they'll have to kill a large number of immortal lords and a few, or even a dozen immortal emperors, before they'll be willing to give up. Although Tsing Hui had been in contact with the immortal Dao civilization in recent years, it had been too short. He hadn't thought that the immortal Dao civilization's true situation would be so difficult. This time, the Master of God's faction has set their eyes on us, and he's a powerful greater god himself. He has 2 greater gods in his divine system, 60 intermediate gods, and tens of thousands of lesser gods. His strength is far above our immortal Dao civilizations. His son has already cultivated to the peak of intermediate god, and if he wants to break through to greater god, he'll have to rely on time or obtain the supreme treasure that the Master of Gods provides on the merit points ranking, a greater god's divine spark. A greater god's divine spark is worth 600 million, and the merit points gained from killing our great eternity immortals is 10 times that of the enemy's level 20 great eternity immortals. In other words, our immortal Dao civilization will have to lose at least 6 great eternity immortals in order to satisfy the Master of God's goal. Immortal Emperor Yu Luo's expression dimmed as he spoke. The immortal Dao civilization relied on the existence of exalted heaven to greatly increase the number of great eternity immortals compared to other factions, but in reality they only had 50 to 60 great eternity immortals. These great eternity immortals were scattered all over the world, and there were only 30 of them in the Jade Dragon soaring Victorious Sky headquarters. 6 great eternity immortals was equivalent to a fifth of the immortal Dao civilization's strength. Our immortal Dao civilization might be able to contend against 3 greater gods led by a greater god. As long as their losses reach a certain level, they'll naturally retreat, right? I'll go see if I can help. Tsing Hui said. Since the Lord of Myriad Treasures and the others had helped him so much, he naturally had to contribute when he needed help. Chapter 885. Heavenly Lord. Tsing Hui quickly arrived at the palace where the Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures was. At this moment, the Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures was discussing something with a few immortal emperors. Among these immortal emperors, the Purple Gold Immortal Emperor, who had a good relationship with the 7-Star Sword Spirit, the Long Shang Immortal Emperor, and the Heavenly Circuit Immortal Emperor were among them. Seeing Tsing Hui's arrival, the Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures was slightly distracted. His eyes immediately fell on Tsing Hui as he carefully sized him up. After a while, he praised, "It seems that you've completely grasped your own great Dao laws. You've improved a lot after 1,000 years of cultivation. Although your Great Tao might be slightly inferior to those Great Tao actualized experts, their Great Tao originates from outside while yours originates from within. Your compatibility and control are incomparable. Combining the two, you should be able to slightly suppress ordinary Great Tao actualized experts. I've never really fought before, so I don't know. There will be a chance. The Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures said. Tsing Hui looked at the Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures. Although the Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures' expression was a bit more serious than Immortal Emperor Yuluo and the others, he clearly wasn't as worried as Immortal Emperor Yuluo. He couldn't help but ask, I just met Immortal Emperor Yuluo and learned from him that the Brilliant God's divine clan has set their sights on the Immortal Tao civilization. What's the situation now? The Brilliant God has indeed set their sights on us. Our Immortal Tao civilization has indeed suffered heavy losses during this time, but the current losses are still within an acceptable range. The Heavenly Lord of Plentiful Treasures sighed. Over the years, our Immortal Tao civilization has been targeted more than once or twice. We've already gained a lot of experience in dealing with it. Compared to when we were targeted by the most powerful divine clans and had to flee in all directions, the threat posed by the Brilliant God's clan pales in comparison. Oh! Tsing Hui pondered for a moment. What do you plan to do next? Is there anything you need my help with? This Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures looked at Tsing Hui with a hesitant expression. When Immortal Emperor Longshang saw Tsing Hui taking the initiative to bring up this matter, he couldn't help but say, since Immortal Emperor Tsing Hui has such good intentions, why don't we borrow Immortal Emperor Tsing Hui's strength to resolve this matter? Otherwise, even if our plan succeeds, we'll still have to pay a heavy price. In particular, a large number of immortals will die tragically. This can be completely avoided. The Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures heard Immortal Emperor Longshang's words and considered Qing Su's current cultivation. He immediately said, there is one method that you can try using your unique advantage as a chaotic being, but it's definitely dangerous. Moreover, I'm worried that it'll affect your cultivation to a certain extent. Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures, why don't you speak frankly? Chaos life forms are different from ordinary life forms. Ordinary life forms can't cultivate a second Tao after cultivating one, but because chaos life forms are superior to ordinary life forms, the laws of Grand Taos are just like the different cultivation methods cultivators like us cultivate. They can imitate almost any Tao without being detected. If Tsing Hui really plans to take action, you can consider using your advantage as a chaos life form to imitate a Tao law and disguise yourself as a ruler or even a great master. You can then think of a way to attack Hierarch Brilliant and cause the cultivators of the Lord of Chaos to fight with those of Hierarch Brilliant's lineage. In order to coordinate with you, we'll also choose the territory occupied by the Lord of Chaos as the battlefield. The Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures paused for a moment. This plan is equivalent to using the power of the Lord of Chaos to deal with Hierarch Brilliant's divine lineage. The only danger is that you might be in danger when you attack Hierarch Brilliant and won't be able to escape unscathed. Additionally, your Tao of Unity is special. I don't know if imitating other Taos will affect your cultivation. That won't be the case. In the past few years, Qing Su had gained an extremely deep understanding of his laws. Coupled with the fact that the second step of his cultivation required him to gather the 3,000 ways, he had gained a deeper understanding of the laws of other ways as well. As a result, imitating other ways would not affect his own ways at all. After all, everything was for the sake of achieving chaos in the end. However, I need the comprehension of some rulers or even great masters. That's simple. We can provide that. In fact, if it weren't for you, Tsing Hui, we would have asked a great master of the Lord of Chaos to take action and cooperate with him in killing Hierarch Brilliant. However, that plan is far too dangerous. It's great that you're willing to take action. Those great masters are willing to take action? Tsing Hui was puzzled. Why wouldn't they take action? You should know that killing a divine venerable could be exchanged for a divine creation artifact from the Master of Chaos lineage. Although the divine creation artifact might not be compatible with his own great Tao and cultivation method, he could still use it to exchange with others and so on. Under such circumstances, as long as our information is accurate, they might not necessarily not attack. The only drawback is that our immortal Dao civilization would willingly become the bait, and as bait, we would face the risk of being abandoned if anything happens. Xing Hui nodded. He had seen it on the Three Territories battlefield. The exchange price of a divine weapon of creation was indeed one ultimate god or 10 superior gods. As for those divine weapons of creation that were tailor-made for them, they had to kill one supreme expert or 30 superior gods of the other side. Unlike the Lord of Chaos's domain, the King of Pantheon's domain only had about 300 to 400 high gods, or at most 500. 30 high gods was almost a tenth of the total number of high gods in the Lord of Pantheon's domain. From this, one could see how difficult it was to achieve this goal. There's no time to lose. I'll have someone prepare it for you. All right. By the way, Lord of Chaos, I'd like to select 3,000 true immortals from the immortal Dao civilization to take them under my wing. I need to study their cultivation methods, and I'll do my best to help them break through to the Tai immortal realm as soon as possible. In the future, I'll do my best to help them break through to the Grand Luo immortal realm. The Lord of Plentiful Treasure's eyes lit up when he heard this. Xing Hui, are you planning to take in disciples? Not only the Lord of Plentiful Treasures, but the other immortal emperors also looked at Xing Hui. Xing Hui was now equivalent to a great master. Moreover, his characteristics as a chaotic life form allowed him to hide within the Lord of Chaos without being detected. In the future, there was even a glimmer of hope for him to transform into a true chaotic life form. It was not an exaggeration to say that he had a bright future ahead of him. If someone were to become Xing Hui's disciple, the benefits were immeasurable. They can't be considered disciples. I won't teach them attentively. I'll only provide them with resources and give them cultivation directions. Strictly speaking, they should only be in-name disciples. A few disciples is already very impressive. They're just true immortals. I'm sure many will respond. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures smiled. Although there were only a few dozen origin immortal emperors in the immortal Dao civilization, the number of Grand Luo immortals was a lot more than that. As for true immortals, there were millions. If a Lord of Chaos wanted to take in 3,000 disciples, the millions of true immortals would naturally be more than happy to oblige. All right, then I'll have to trouble you to make the arrangements, Lord of Chaos. It just so happens that I need a year or two to familiarize myself with a great Dao law for disguise. Oh, among these laws, it would be best if it's the space law of the Kunpeng lineage of the 12 divine beasts. It has the widest adaptability and is quite similar to the space law of the 3,000 great Daos. We've prepared the great Dao comprehension of a great master of the Kunpeng lineage. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures smiled. I obtained it from a great master I killed 14,000 years ago. That's for the best, Xing Hui said. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures handed the great Dao comprehension of the great master of the Kunpeng lineage he'd killed to Xing Hui. At the same time, as Xing Hui had said, he quickly spread the news that he intended to take in 3,000 disciples. Apart from him, Immortal Emperor Longshang and Immortal Emperor Heavenly Circuit also spared no effort in supporting this matter. Since the immortal Dao civilization was currently facing the threat of God Brilliant, most of its cultivators who'd been stranded outside had hurried back to the soaring Jade Dragon Heavens to seek protection. As a result, there were now millions of true immortals in the immortal Dao civilization's headquarters. These true immortals all recommended themselves and told Xing Hui their information and expertise, hoping to catch Xing Hui's eye. A year later, when Xing Hui comprehended the great Dao comprehension of the great master of the Kunpeng lineage, the information in front of him had reached an astonishing number of 1,220,000. However, when Xing Hui spent half a month going through all of them, he noticed a problem. He immediately sought out the Lord of Plentiful Treasures again. The cultivators of the immortal Dao civilization comprehend great Daos at an extremely high rate, and based on my calculations, there seem to be only 962 great Daos in total. Why is it that less than 1,000 have been passed down? Realization dawned on the Lord of Plentiful Treasures when he heard Tsing Hui's words. You want to unify the 3,000 great Taos and recreate the world of immortal Tao? That's exactly what I'm thinking. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures was both gratified and regretful when he heard this. As a chaos life form, you might have a slim chance of accomplishing this, but the 3,000 great Taos are history now. When our world of immortal Tao was defeated, many great Tao laws collapsed and dissipated. Only 962 great Taos have been passed down, and 90% of them are incomplete. There are only 81 that are truly complete. Only 81 complete great Tao laws. Tsing Hui's heart sank. The Lord of Plentiful Treasures nodded with a sigh. In truth, the Lord of the Gods once thought of using the 3,000 great Taos to recreate our world of immortal Tao and trace the great ancestors' footsteps. He did everything he could to gather many great Taos, but there were too few left to construct a true immortal Tao world. He had no choice but to give up. Tsing Hui's expression changed when he heard this. That made sense. There was no reason why the Lord of the Gods, the Lord of Chaos, and the Lord of Time hadn't thought of this. Although they didn't have fortune jades on hand, it wasn't impossible for them to find a way to replace them with their talents. Tsing Hui, the matter of the 3,000 disciples? The Lord of Plentiful Treasures asked tentatively. Tsing Hui sighed. Who would have thought that he'd run into a problem as soon as he'd planned to cultivate it? The outside world didn't allow for it, so he'd have to think of other methods for the second step of the Tao disc. It's my fault for not thinking things through, he said. I need to think about it carefully. Let's first resolve the problem the immortal Tao civilization is facing. We'll start working together. As a great master of combat arts, I'll contact the other great masters of the Lord of Chaos and attack God Glory. Chapter 886. Alright, this is the information we've found out about the brilliant God's bloodline. The Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures handed the information to Tsing Hui. In addition, although we've maintained a cooperative relationship with many great masters, this cooperation is purely based on mutual benefits. It's not trustworthy. If you want to act as a great master, I don't recommend that you use this identity to get involved with our civilization. Tsing Hui pondered for a moment, then nodded. I understand. The rest is up to you. The brilliant God hasn't locked onto Soaring Dragon Victor's position yet. In addition, we can move Soaring Dragon Victor and make it slowly change its position. He shouldn't be able to catch up to us in a short time, but if he borrows the power of others, the time he'll need to catch up to us will be shortened to 30 years. Tsing Hui nodded. If he wanted to rush from the domain of the Lord of Chaos to the domain of the Lord of Time, it would take him more than 10 years even with the help of the super space-time cannon. How could he possibly move the entire pantheon? It must be known that after a cultivator reached the realm of one thought creation, they would no longer be able to accommodate their own world into another cultivator's world. At most, they would only be able to manifest their world as the energy form of a world god. In other words, the fastest movement speed of a pantheon wasn't the speed of a divine, but the speed of a true god. In this case, even if they locked onto Soaring Dragon Victor's position and killed their way over, it would still be normal for them to spend several decades. I understand. I'll think of a way in 30 years. Then I'll leave it to you. The Heavenly Lord of Myriad Treasures said seriously. Tsing Hui didn't waste any more time and quickly headed for the teleportation formation in the Source World. The one in charge of studying the formation was still Immortal Emperor Songhai. However, although 1,000 years had passed, he still hadn't fully comprehended the formation. At most, he'd let the people on the other side of the formation use some special method to inform the people on the other side of the formation so that they could activate the formation. With Tsing Hui's arrival, someone naturally notified Immortal Emperor Vast Sea. He waited for less than 2 hours before the transmission array opened. Tsing Hui stepped out, and as the array formation changed, he reappeared in the divine desolate great world. Immortal Emperor Tsing Hui. Upon seeing Tsing Hui's arrival, Immortal Emperor Songhai, who was studying formations, quickly came forward to greet him enthusiastically. Immortal Emperor Songhai. Xing Hui glanced at the advanced array formations set up around them. They were clearly used to conceal this area of the void, and he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. What are you? During this period of time, the great world has not been peaceful. In order to prevent others from discovering this teleportation array, I spent more than 10 years concealing this area. Immortal Emperor Songhai said, Not peaceful? What do you mean? Xing Hui's thoughts turned and he quickly understood something. You mean, someone has designs on the divine desolate great world? Maybe. I didn't pay much attention to the changes in the divine desolate great world situation. Most of my time was spent studying the teleportation array. In addition, these battles seemed to be limited to outside the divine desolate great world and didn't cause much damage to the divine desolate great world, so I didn't pay too much attention to it. Immortal Emperor Songhai said, as an expert of the immortal Dao civilization, he obviously couldn't be bothered to care about the cultivators of the Master of Chaos bloodline. I have to go take a look. Immortal Emperor Songhai, I'll leave the matters here to you. Immortal Emperor Xing Hui, please do as you wish. Immortal Emperor Songhai said and opened a gap in the formation. Xing Hui nodded, and his figure flashed out of the concealment formation. As he left the range of the formation closed up once more. Very soon, it enveloped the entire region within 100 kilometers. It was so well hidden that even Qing Su would not be able to see through it if he did not look carefully. The most powerful things of the immortal Dao civilization are formations and magic treasures. This rumor is true. In terms of the concealment of this formation, even if a great divine ability user didn't know there was a problem here in advance, they wouldn't be able to find any problems with a sweep of their divine sense, let alone rulers and sovereigns. If they stood outside this formation, they wouldn't even know what was wrong with where they were. Xing Hui glanced at the formation and sighed in his heart. The immortal Dao civilization was indeed extraordinary to be able to survive until now under the orders of the Master of Time, the Master of Gods, and the Master of Chaos. Those top great divine ability users had complaints about the actions of the three great existences. Slacking off was a problem, but the most important thing was that the immortal Dao civilization itself had good abilities. Thinking of this, Xing Hui turned and flew toward the Void Sword Pavilion. The bloodline of the glorious god is not weak. Among them, the glorious god is the master of a divine system with 2 superior gods, more than 60 middle gods, and more than 10,000 inferior gods. Even if he is the weakest superior god, with the blessing of the gods, he can have the combat strength not inferior to the joint forces of 3 great divine ability users. If he is a little stronger, it is not difficult to match 4, 5, or 6 superior gods. To besiege and kill such a terrifying divine ability user, it would take at least 10 great divine ability users. But I don't know any great divine ability users in my circle now, and it is difficult to trust any great divine ability users that I casually find. In this case, I can use the channels of the Void Sword Pavilion. Although the Void Sword Pavilion doesn't have any great divine ability users, it is on good terms with many great divine ability users. If I can use them as a bridge to get to know some great divine ability users, and then bring some great divine ability users one by one to go to the glorious god, the difficulties of the immortal Dao civilization will be easily solved. Xing Hui thought to himself. His figure had already shuttled quickly, and soon arrived outside the Void Sword Pavilion. When he arrived at the Void Sword Pavilion, Xing Hui quickly noticed the abnormality of the Void Sword Pavilion. The Xuanshu world of the Void Sword Pavilion had clearly been strengthened layer by layer, and the formations inside had been completely activated. In particular, Qing Su could vaguely sense a sharp aura in the depths of the Xuanshu world. Even to him who was equivalent to a great master right now, the aura posed a slight threat. In less than a breath's time after Xing Hui arrived outside the Void Sword Pavilion, a chaotic realm supreme had already appeared. This supreme was not one of the 6 sword masters, Yichen, Lanxin, Floating Light, Sweeping Shadow, Bright Jade, or Feishing. However, after he appeared, he quickly recognized Xing Hui. He immediately bowed respectfully and curiously, "Greetings, Elder Lingchuan of the Void Sword Pavilion. Are you Lord Xing Hui?" the master of the divine wilderness? Yes, I am Tsing Hui. Tsing Hui said, during this period of time, I found a place outside the divine wilderness great world to cultivate in seclusion and consolidate my realm. Not long ago, I heard that someone seemed to have evil intentions towards the divine wilderness great world, so I immediately rushed over. When Ling Xuan heard Tsing Hui's identity, he immediately became more respectful. It is true. Currently, the two sword masters, Li He and Song Jie, are in charge of the affairs of the Void Sword Pavilion. However, the two sword masters are fighting against strong enemies outside the realm. The one who is really here is Sword Master Qing Kong. Please come in, I will inform Sword Master Qing Kong. Tsing Hui nodded. He had already learned about the power division of the Void Sword Pavilion from Bai Shuang. There were not many masters in the Void Sword Pavilion, and he did not know the exact number. However, the four sword masters in charge were Li He, Song Jie, Jun Yan, and Shumi. These four sword masters were also the strongest sword masters in the Void Sword Pavilion. They cultivated the four strongest swordsmanship of the Void Sword Pavilion, and each of them had the ability to fight with a great medium for a short period of time. Simply put, if the entire Void Sword Pavilion came out in full force, it would be comparable to a great medium who did not bring any subordinates with him. Each of these sword masters needed to be in charge of various realms. At the moment, at least 3 of them had come. Even Li He and Song Jie, who were the strongest sword masters, had come. Tsing Hui could not help but guess the seriousness of the matter. Sword God Tsing Hui. Tsing Hui came to the buildings of the Void Sword Pavilion. Sword Master Qing Kong had already come forward and greeted him with a smile. I have long heard about the heroic appearance of Sword God Tsing Hui from elders Floating Light and Sweeping Shadow. Seeing you today, you are indeed extraordinary. Sword Master Qing Kong. Tsing Hui nodded and went straight to the point. I want to know what happened. I have already left a mark of the Great Way outside the divine wilderness great world. Why is there still someone who wants to come to my divine wilderness great world? Sword Master Clear Sky could not help but smile bitterly when she heard Qing Su's words. If it were a regular great ability user, they obviously wouldn't do anything unnecessary after learning that there's a great ability user in the divine wilderness great world. However, the problem is that this great ability user called Taoist Clearwater is different. He's the kind of person who obtained a great fortuitous encounter and suddenly broke through to become a great ability user. He took less than 10,000 years to go from ruler to great ability user. As she said that, the Sword Master of Clear Sky secretly glanced at Qing Su. Compared to Lord of Water Qing Shui, who cultivated from a master to a great medium level in less than 10,000 years, this sword god Tsing Hui, who had cultivated for less than 1,000 years, was the real monster. What you mean is, his growth speed is too fast. Other than a great world, there is no other territory at all. In addition, Sword God Tsing Hui may have just reached the great medium level when you left your mark of the Great Way. That mark of the Great Way is obviously inferior to a real mark of the Great Way. That is why Lord of Water Qing Shui came to find you 100 years ago. No territory, and the mark of the Great Way is too weak. When Tsing Hui heard this, he could not help but sigh at his bad luck. He could even meet a great medium who only had a great world as his territory. What about now? Taoist Clearwater does understand that if he really does forcefully take over the divine wilderness great world and offend you, Green Ruin Sword God, he won't be able to live in peace in the future. Coupled with the fact that the 6 sword masters of our Void Sword Pavilion are standing guard outside the world, he's in a stalemate with you, so he's fearful of you. That's why he threatened that he wanted you to go out and spar with him, Green Ruin Sword God. If your strength can gain his recognition, he'll turn around and leave. If not, the Sword Master of Clear Sky didn't say anything else. But Tsing Hui understood. For a moment, he could not help but snort. Can't be recognized by him? What do you mean by recognized by him? Probably. Sword God Tsing Hui and our Void Sword Pavilion can pose a fatal threat to him so that he can retreat. When Tsing Hui heard this, he did not want to waste time on these details. He said directly, "Lead the way for me. I will go and meet this Lord of Water Qingshui and see if he has the ability to plot against the divine wilderness great world. Chapter 887. In the void outside the divine wilderness great world. A huge void fortress spanned a territory of 10 trillion kilometers away from the divine wilderness great world. For a powerful divine, once a battle broke out with all his strength, it was not strange for the divine wilderness great world to be affected by the divine wilderness great world. In order to ensure that the divine wilderness great world would not be destroyed in this high-intensity battle, they had to set up the battlefield as far away from the divine wilderness great world as possible. At this time, in the battle fortress of the Void Sword Pavilion, a quarrel that had been going on and off for decades broke out as usual. Liha Sword Master, if it were for more than 10,000, I could understand that the Void Sword Pavilion would put all its strength into fighting with this powerful divine. But now, we can get less than 2,000 carrier objects in the divine wilderness great world every year, but for this reason, the Void Sword Pavilion has mobilized 7 Sword Masters. This is already half of the strength of the Void Sword Pavilion. Even the evil punishment and god-slaying divine swords have been brought over. Don't you think that the price we have paid is too great? Since the Void Sword Pavilion has paid such a huge price, we should occupy the majority of the carrier objects in the divine wilderness great world, instead of less than 1/5 of it like now. In the conference room of the Void Sword Pavilion, the master of the Tsang Jie sword reprimanded with anger in his eyes. Master of the Tsang Jie sword, how many times do you need me to say the same thing to you before you are satisfied? With the power of the powerful divine in the divine wilderness great world, there is no need for the other party to give nearly 2,000 of the annual income to the Void Sword Pavilion. It is entirely because he made a deal with the Void Sword Pavilion before he grew up and made this agreement. That is why they have the ability to give the Void Sword Pavilion so much income. Since the other party has kept the agreement and has carried it out for 900 years, now that they are in danger for less than 100 years and need the help of the Void Sword Pavilion, we are going to break the agreement? What do you think of the Tsing Hui Divine Swordsman by doing this? What do you think of the Void Sword Pavilion? The tone of the master of the Liha sword was also full of dissatisfaction and retorted harshly. Powerful divine? I don't know if there is a powerful expert in the divine wilderness great world. In my opinion, you have all been deceived by the so-called great elder of the Hunyuan sword sect. He might just be a ruler with a supreme treasure and is only relying on that treasure to bluff. If he really was a powerful expert, he wouldn't have slashed out with a sword that clearly imitated the imprint of the great Tao. Moreover, he is willing to be a coward in the face of danger. Is this your excuse for backing down? You know, for the existence of the great divine, it is not strange for them to retreat for 1,000 years at a time. Think about it. Once the Void Sword Pavilion breaches the contract, if the great divine returns and learns that the Void Sword Pavilion did not fulfill its obligation to protect the divine wilderness world, and expel the Void Sword Pavilion from the divine wilderness world, the Void Sword Pavilion will lose 1,500 to 2,000 years worth of things every year. Can you afford such a loss? There was a trace of anger in the master of the Liha sword. On the side, several sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion were also present, but they watched from a neutral position. The dispute in front of them was not only related to the distribution of benefits in the divine wilderness great world, but also the dispute between the 4 strongest branches of the Void Sword Pavilion. Sword masters who were not part of the 4 strongest branches were too lazy to get involved. Everything you said is based on the premise that the divine wilderness great world has a great medium. When the time comes, there will be no great medium in the divine wilderness great world at all. Only our Void Sword Pavilion will stupidly not know the truth and stand at the front line to resist the attacks of the great medium for them. The master of the Tsang Calamity sword said coldly. You, the master of the Liha sword, was about to refute, but a voice passed through the layers of formations of the Void Sword Pavilion and directly resounded in the conference room. It seems that the master of the Tsang Calamity sword is very dissatisfied with the divine wilderness great world occupying a large portion of the divine wilderness great world. In that case, from now on, the divine wilderness great world will no longer cooperate with the Void Sword Pavilion. The cooperation will only be limited to the master of the Liha sword. In the future, we will only give the divine wilderness great world to the people of the master of the Liha sword. Ah! Who is it? Who is it? Come out. Noticing the sudden emergence of this voice, the 6 sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion changed their expressions at the same time and shouted sternly. Although there was a struggle between the 4 strongest factions within the Void Sword Pavilion, it could be seen from their current series of reactions that once an external enemy appeared, the entire Void Sword Pavilion would quickly unite against the external enemy. Sword Masters, don't worry. It's Sword God Xing Hui. Sword God Xing Hui has broken through and returned. At this time, a somewhat hurried voice came from outside the conference room. It was the master of the Clear Sky Sword who had brought Xing Hui here. The moment he faced Xing Hui, he had already confirmed the identity of Xing Hui as a divine. Now that he heard the words of the master of the Tsang Calamity Sword being slightly disrespectful to Xing Hui, he was naturally a little nervous. As soon as he finished speaking, Xing Hui's figure also appeared in the conference room. Appearing in the conference room, he did not deliberately hide the Great Way law that he had simulated. The Great Way of Space that belonged to the Kunpeng lineage was released. For a moment, the environment around him seemed to be distorted. The sword masters who had cultivated the immemorial sacred body were better off, but the supreme martial artists felt that their Great Way power seemed to be disturbed or even deprived. There was a faint tendency that they would be knocked back to the realm of One Thought realm. Even the sword masters who had cultivated the sacred body of origin and formed a cycle could sense the invasive nature of the power of laws from Qing Su. Under the pressure of the power of laws, their sacred body of origin seemed to be unable to circulate smoothly. It felt slightly sluggish. Sword God Xing Hui. Transforming the body into the way. I am the Great Way, divine. Sword God Xing Hui is indeed a true divine. It seems that 1,000 years of accumulation has completely stabilized his breakthrough to the divine realm. The sword masters present were all very knowledgeable. The moment they felt the power of the Great Way on Xing Hui, they had already determined that his identity as a divine was real. For a moment, the master of the Tsang Calamity Sword, who had previously doubted Xing Hui's identity, suddenly looked terrible. After the master of the Liha Sword was overjoyed, he quickly said, "Is what Sword God Xing Hui said true? If so, we will first thank Sword God Xing Hui." Back then, Sword God Xing Hui, your Hunyuan sword sect signed an agreement with our Void Sword Pavilion. Now that you have directly turned the agreement into the master of the Liha Sword, this is a little inappropriate. At this time, a sword master level figure stood up and cautiously rebutted. Is the master of the Liha Sword not a member of the Void Sword Pavilion? Strictly speaking, I didn't go back on our original agreement. As for whether you want to distribute the treasures after my chaotic origin sword sect hands them over to the Li He sword master's lineage, it'll be up to you to decide. Xing Hui said lightly. He would not completely push the master of the Liha sword to the opposite side of the entire Void Sword Pavilion. On the contrary, if he gave the right to dispose of the objects to the master of the Liha sword, he believed that the master of the Liha sword would be able to rely on the objects to gain the support of more sword masters. Well, since there is a divine wilderness great world outside who is challenging us, we cannot show weakness. I will go out now and meet Dao Lord Qingshui. With that, Qing Su stopped talking to the sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion. With a leap, he completely ignored the various formations in the fortress. Under the circulation of the Way of Space, all of the formations evaded him. With the power of the Way of Space, he easily passed through and appeared outside the endless space. After sensing the location of Water Lord Qingshui, he directly made his way towards her. In this regard, the sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion looked at each other, but no one dared to be dissatisfied. As a divine wilderness great master, he did not need to care too much about the thoughts of these sword masters. Everyone, the scene of 2 divine wilderness great masters fighting is very rare, especially since Sword God Xing Hui and Dao Lord Qingshui are both new divine wilderness great masters. Witnessing the battle between the two of them will definitely be immeasurably beneficial for us to break into the divine wilderness great masters in the future. We cannot miss such a great battle. I will go first. Seeing Tsing Hui leave, the master of the Liha sword immediately followed. When the other sword masters saw this, they also shouted, "Master of the Liha sword, wait for me for a moment." "Master of the Liha sword, I will go with you." "Go, go, go, let's follow." For a moment, the remaining sword masters all followed the footsteps of the master of the Liha sword. Looking at the other sword masters who surrounded the master of the Liha sword with enthusiasm, the master of the Tsang-Jie sword could not help but look even worse. However, the battle between two divine wilderness great masters, especially a new divine wilderness great master, was indeed very tempting to him. The master of the Tsang-Jie sword hesitated for a moment, then finally stepped forward and followed the master of the Liha sword and the others. In the endless void, Tsing Hui directly appeared in front of Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui and looked at her from a distance. Looking at Tsing Hui and feeling the great way of space power that belonged to the Kunpeng lineage, Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui looked a little strange. I originally thought that the news that there was a divine wilderness great master in the divine wilderness great world was a bluff of the Void Sword Pavilion. After all, there is obviously something wrong with the mark of the Great Way. I didn't expect there to be a divine wilderness great master in this world. Then, Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui, do you still plan to attack our divine wilderness great world? Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui's face showed a trace of embarrassment. However, as a divine wilderness great master, even if what he did was very excessive, it did not mean that he would show weakness. He just said, "Since there is a divine wilderness great master in charge, then I will leave. However, I heard that you seem to have broken through to the divine wilderness great master realm not long ago. It just so happens that I am the same. Moreover, I have never fought with a real divine wilderness great master. Why don't we have a competition?" Tsing Hui understood that Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui was not willing to give up. He immediately responded indifferently, "Since Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui is interested, I will accompany you to the end. However, since we are going to fight, there must be a bet. You invaded my divine wilderness great world just for the production of the divine wilderness great world. If you can win, I will give you half of the divine wilderness great world. If you lose, you will have to serve me for 10,000 years. Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui's eyes flashed when he heard this. Serving him for 10,000 years was nothing to a divine wilderness great master who had an endless lifespan. If he could win, he would have half of the divine wilderness great world's production of the divine wilderness great world. Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui was able to become a divine wilderness great master from the sovereign realm in 10,000 years. Naturally, he was also a proud and arrogant person. He knew that he would not be inferior to a fellow divine wilderness great master. He immediately promised, "Well, as Taoist Tsing Hui said, if I win, half of the divine wilderness great world's production of the divine wilderness great world will be mine. If I lose, I will serve you for 10,000 years. Great, how about we make a chaos oath? To us, what kind of binding power can the chaos oath have? The highest rule of the chaos oath, those who violate it will be stripped of their chaos level, all. They will never be able to be a son of chaos again." Lord of the Tao Lord Qingshui's expression changed. "Are you afraid? What a joke, why would I be afraid? If you want to make a chaos oath, then I will make an oath." Chapter 888. Since they were both great divines, the most important thing was the confrontation between the great Tao principles. Tsing Hui's great Tao principles were simulated by the characteristics of the chaotic beings, so he had a certain innate advantage. Although Lord Qingshui's great Tao principles had not been condensed for long and had awakened the power of the son of the Torch Dragon lineage, its power was much greater than Tsing Hui had imagined. When his great Tao of space collided with Lord Qingshui's great Tao, he was actually at a disadvantage. Tsing Hui could not help but be surprised by this result. How is this possible? Tsing Hui's expression changed slightly. Being at a disadvantage, the most obvious feature was that the hundreds of millions of kilometers of space formed by Tsing Hui was penetrated by the sunlight that represented the power of the Torch Dragon lineage's Great Tao. As the sunlight shone, the layers of space formed by his Great Tao of space were rapidly melting like frost exposed to the scorching sun. In just a moment, it had melted more than 1,000,000 kilometers in diameter. Didn't Lord Qingshui just break through to the level of great divines? My Great Tao of space is simulated by the characteristics of the chaotic beings and the Great Tao of unification as the foundation, but I'm already at a disadvantage at the beginning of the battle. Tsing Hui looked solemn. Circles of power of the Great Tao were emitted from his body and penetrated toward Lord Qingshui, trying to analyze the flaws in Lord Qingshui's Great Tao to reverse the current situation. However, the Great Tao principles that kept penetrating did not disintegrate the power of the Great Tao that Lord Qingshui manifested. Instead, Lord Qingshui took advantage of the dissipated Great Tao principles to spread over. He lost nearly 10 million kilometers of the Great Tao principles that he occupied with his Great Tao of space, which was nearly 1/10 of the influence of the Great Tao principles. Sword God Tsing Hui seems to be at a disadvantage. The sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion who were watching the battle from afar could not help but change their expressions when they saw this scene. It's not like it's the truth. Sword God Tsing Hui is indeed being suppressed by Lord Qingshui. If it's not a life and death battle between great divines, the main competition is the power of the Great Tao principles. Whoever's Great Tao principles can completely suppress the opponent's Great Tao principles will be the winner. At the same time, it proves whose Great Tao principles are better. But now, Lord Qingshui has the advantage, the Clear Sky Sword Master said in a low voice. Sword God Tsing Hui is still too young. Even though Tao Lord Clearwater, like him, only used 10,000 years to break through to the realm of Great Medium, he has been stuck in the realm of Dominator and Supreme for millions of years. He has accumulated a lot of experience. On the other hand, Sword God Tsing Hui, what is 1,000 years of experience to a great medium? In front of ordinary sovereigns, he can rely on his unique ability to transform his body into the Tao to be unstoppable. However, once he faces a truly powerful expert, even one who has only recently ascended, he immediately becomes powerless. The Liha Sword Master agreed with a helpless look on his face. Should we go up and help? Although Tsing Hui is at a disadvantage, the disadvantage is not very obvious. If we count the power of the Void Sword Pavilion, it should not be difficult to defeat Lord of Water Dao Qingshui. A sword master suggested. Just as this sword master's suggestion left his mouth, it was immediately rejected by another sword master. At present, although Sword God Tsing Hui and Lord of Water Dao Qingshui are fighting, they are not fighting to the death. Once we intervene, the balance between the two will be broken and Lord of Water Dao Qingshui will attack with all his strength. The situation will immediately change. The destructive power of a great medium killing Lord of Water Dao Qingshui is absolutely devastating. Even if we can defeat Lord of Water Dao Qingshui in the end, we will have to pay a great price. Moreover, what if Lord of Water Dao Qingshui does not fight with us head-on, but lurks outside the Divine Wilderness Great World like a ghost and attacks the Divine Wilderness Great World? How can we resist? At that time, maybe the entire Void Sword Pavilion will be involved in this big trouble. The Liha Sword Master nodded in agreement. The Void Sword Pavilion keeps its promise, but the enemy of a great medium is not something we can fight against. Therefore, we can only rely on Sword God Tsing Hui. If he can't do anything, at this point, the Liha Sword Master did not say anything more. As the people of the Void Sword Pavilion watched the battle with solemn expressions, the battle between Tsing Hui and Lord of Water Dao Qingshui was gradually intensifying. However, no matter how hard Tsing Hui tried, the range of his Great Tao Law was still shrinking. As time went by, after Lord of Water Dao Qingshui adapted to his Great Tao Law, her suppression speed was gradually increasing. According to this trend, in less than a day, the range of his Great Tao Law would be completely occupied by Lord of Water Dao Qingshui. Of course, Xing Hui could open up a new battlefield and expand the range of his great Dao Law to 1 billion kilometers or 10 billion kilometers, but that would be meaningless. If he could do that, Lord of Water Dao Qingshui could do the same. It would just increase the consumption of each other's strength. Is it going to be a failure? Xing Hui looked a little strange. He had been defeated in his first battle as a great medium. This made him feel a little embarrassed. For a moment, the nature of his great Dao Law began to change quietly, and the range of the power of the law gradually became aggressive. Under this aggressive great Dao Law, the range of Lord of Water Dao Qingshui's law seemed to be suddenly pierced by a sharp sword. The confrontation of the great Dao between the two gradually became a battle of offense and defense, and gradually became anxious. Wait a minute. This anxiety lasted for less than a moment. Xing Hui, who had used the characteristics of the coalescence Great Dao and had begun to comprehend the 3,000 Great Dao, noticed a trace of abnormality. This Lord of Water Dao Qingshui, his Great Dao is a little strange. Although he used the power of the Great Dao of the Torch Dragon lineage, there is another kind of power in this power of the Great Dao. It is because of the existence of this power. In the confrontation just now, I was defeated. 2 kinds of Great Dao laws? This was almost unimaginable for the cultivators of the Master of Chaos. At the thought of this, the power of the coalescence Great Dao that emanated from Xing Hui's body could not help but become more obvious. It was as if it could pierce through the fog of Lord of Water Dao Qingshui's Torch Dragon lineage's Great Dao Law and see the other power of the law that was hidden under the Torch Dragon lineage's Great Dao Law. However, as his movements became more intense, Lord of Water Dao Qingshui, who was a great medium, also noticed something. His expression changed slightly, and he was faintly in disbelief. In the next moment, he pondered for a moment and said, "If we continue to fight like this, I'm afraid it will be difficult to determine the winner. Why don't we go into the depths of the void and fight with all our might?" "That's what I'm thinking." Xing Hui agreed happily. Seeing that Lord of Water Dao Qingshui stepped into the void and entered the depths of the void, he immediately followed him. The Liha Sword Master, Clear Sky Sword Master, and the others looked at each other with a faint hint of surprise on their faces. It seems that Sword God Xing Hui has other tricks up his sleeve. At the last moment of their confrontation, there was a faint trend of him turning the tables. "Let's follow them right away." As they spoke, they quickly leaped forward and rushed in the direction where Xing Hui and Lord of Water Dao Qingshui left. However, after chasing for a few days, they gradually stopped. They looked at each other and smiled bitterly. They erased the traces left behind by their journey. It seems that Sword God Xing Hui and Lord of Water Dao Qingshui do not intend to let us watch the upcoming battle. If the great medium really fight with all their might, they will inevitably use some unknown killing moves. It's reasonable that they don't want us to know their killing moves. Since the 2 great medium don't want us to watch the battle, we'd better not continue to follow and disturb them, lest we offend the 2 great medium. That's reasonable. In fact, the battle of the laws between the 2 great medium has already made me feel something. I'll go back and cultivate in seclusion. I hope that Sword God Xing Hui can win this battle. Otherwise, it will be troublesome. Several sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion said and stopped. At the same time, they glanced worriedly in the direction of Xing Hui and prayed secretly. "Let's do it here." Lord of Water Dao Qingshui took Xing Hui to travel for more than half a month and stopped in the depths of the void. At the same time, she looked at Xing Hui and said with a strange expression, "I didn't expect that His Excellency Xing Hui and I are the same kind of person. No wonder His Excellency Xing Hui can have such achievements in such a short period of time." Hearing this, Xing Hui nodded with a smile. At the same time, he also regarded Lord of Water Dao Qingshui as a creature of chaos. "You are not weak either. You have become a great medium in 10,000 years. Such talent is already amazing. This is nothing. How can it be compared with you?" Lord of Water Dao Qingshui looked at Xing Hui and asked curiously, "In fact, His Excellency Xing Hui is the first time I have seen an existence similar to me in so many years. I wonder if I can see the true form of Sword Master Xing Hui?" "My true form?" Xing Hui was slightly startled and faintly felt that something was wrong. It seemed that he and Lord of Water Dao Qingxue were not talking about the same thing. However, Dao Lord Qingxue misunderstood his expression as hesitation. He could not help but smile. Whatever. Since I'm the one who suggested it, I'll show you my sincerity first and let you see my true form so that you can evaluate it. As soon as he finished speaking, two completely different great Tao principles suddenly erupted from him. A blazing sun formed completely by the power of the Dharma suddenly appeared. In the sun, one could see the phantom of the divine beast torch dragon, blooming with endless brilliance. However, when the blazing sun lasted for less than half a breath, a strange existence that was as dark as a black hole appeared. It was also filled with great Tao. One light and one darkness, one yin and one yang. The two formed a perfect symbiosis, causing the form of the Dharma to become unprecedentedly mysterious and strange. This is, looking at the mystical appearance of Lord of Water Dao Qingxue, even with Xing Hui's current state of mind, he could not help but narrow his eyes. He was wrong. He was very wrong. The Lord of Water Dao Qingxue in front of him was not a creature of chaos at all. Instead, he cultivated two Dharma laws and fused them into one to form a new mysterious existence. The two great Tao principles corresponded to the extreme yang illumination of the 12 divine beasts and the extreme yin netherglow that had been lost and fallen. Chapter 889. Torch Dragon, Netherglow. Xing Hui looked at Dao Lord Qingxue in front of him. He did not expect to see two completely different great Tao laws in this person. One of the great Tao laws was the long-lost great yin netherglow. The extreme yang illumination and the extreme yin netherglow were the famous two saints of heaven and earth. They were the top divine beasts. These two divine beasts were once known as the leaders of the 12 divine beasts. However, because of the fall of the extreme yin netherglow, the remaining extreme yang illumination lost its yin and yang balance and its power plummeted. Although it still retained the dignity of a divine beast, its power was inferior to the divine beasts such as the golden crow, Kunpeng, Qi, and Hundun. When Xing Hui cultivated the torch dragon bloodline, he had sensed the shortcomings of the torch dragon bloodline and had thought of finding a cultivator with the nether glow bloodline to make up for his shortcomings. It was not until later that he learned by chance that more than half of the 12 great Taos represented by the 12 divine beasts had fallen that he gave up this unrealistic idea. However, now, at this moment, he saw the fallen nether glow bloodline in this mysterious Dao Lord Qingxue. Sir Xing Hui, how do you feel? Dao Lord Qingxue released his great Dao laws and quickly withdrew them. The legendary extreme yin nether glow. Isn't this great Dao law long lost? It was said that it was taken away by the Master of Gods. I can't believe. I'm lucky enough to see it. I obtained the fragments of the great Dao laws of the fallen divine beasts by chance. Dao Lord Qingxue smiled and then asked, May I know which of the 6 fallen divine beasts is Sir Xing Hui's second great Dao? The other 6 fallen divine beasts. Xing Hui's heart skipped a beat. There were serious shackles in the cultivation system of the Master of Chaos. It was not allowed to cultivate 2 great Tao laws at the same time. However, this so-called prohibition was not absolute. If someone could obtain the fragments of the great Tao laws of the 6 fallen divine beasts, there was hope for them to cultivate the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th great Tao laws. At this time, he could not help but think of the legendary supreme great divinities. They were all great practitioners who had cultivated the great Tao of the 12 divine beasts, so why would there be a difference in strength? How could a powerful divine arts practitioner defeat dozens of ordinary great divine arts practitioners by himself? The destinable divine artifact might be one reason, but that might not be the only reason. The ultimate gods and ultimate gods of the Master of Gods lineage had borrowed the power of the divine system. It was equivalent to having their own formation while they were the core of the formation. The power of a formation and a divine system was naturally far beyond what ordinary experts of the same level could withstand. Then how did the great masters of the Master of Chaos allow themselves to reach the ultimate realm? The key was in the laws. The laws of the great Tao that had fallen from the bodies of the 6 divine beasts. If there really was a great expert who could gather all the great Tao laws of the 12 divine beasts and fuse these 12 great Tao laws into one to simulate the true body of the great wheel of life, perhaps there was a chance to break the shackles imposed on them by the master of chaos and achieve a method similar to using strength to prove one's Tao, leaping into the chaos or the creation of life. It was just like Tsing Hui's Great Tao Plate method intended to condense the laws of the 12 divine beasts to trace back to the origin point plate. Then, with the origin point plate as the center, he would create a world of immortals and civilization, thereby resonating with the broken world and soaring into the sky. It was nothing more than that it would be extremely difficult for others to fuse the laws of the 12 divine beasts' Great Tao, but he. Due to the foundation of the 3,000 Great Tao and the destinable divine jade, it would be much easier to condense the laws of the 12 divine beasts to trace back to the origin point plate than those top great divine arts practitioners. Many thoughts flashed through Tsing Hui's mind, and soon he had a plan in his mind. As a chaotic being, his characteristics allowed him to easily simulate the divine beast Kun Peng, who was proficient in the Great Tao of space, as well as the divine beast Chaos. However, in order to ensure that nothing went wrong, he took the lead and said, "I don't have a deep understanding of the second Great Tao law, please excuse me." After that, he only slightly borrowed the characteristics of the chaotic being to demonstrate the magic of the divine beast Chaos's Great Tao. Even Lord of Tao Clearwater could only vaguely determine that Tsing Hui's second Great Tao came from the divine beast Chaos, but before she could figure out which direction it represented, she withdrew it. Although Lord of Tao Clearwater was not very satisfied with this result, she could not continue to ask, so she nodded. The divine beast Chaos is a divine beast that is most proficient in defense, but if it is combined with the laws of space, it can form an endless black hole that can devour and annihilate everything. It is quite impressive, but as the divine beast Chaos has not fallen, it should be extremely difficult to obtain its great Tao law. I wonder what kind of opportunity Sir Tsing Hui had to be able to successfully cultivate this great Tao law. It's just a coincidence. Tsing Hui said indifferently, "There is no one around here, so we don't have to hide the mystery of our great Tao law. How about we use our full strength to determine the winner?" That's what I was thinking. As soon as Lord of Tao Clearwater finished speaking, the great Tao law that belonged to the Sun Torch Dragon and Moon Nether Glow suddenly erupted. The two kinds of laws were equivalent to the two Qis of Yin and Yang. Even if Lord of Tao Clearwater could not perfectly combine the power of these laws, the combination of the two could still produce an effect greater than two. Feeling the power of the combined great Tao that was constantly spreading out from Lord of Tao Clearwater, Tsing Hui could not help but sigh. If your opponent was an ordinary great divine, even if there were 2 or even 3 of them, I'm afraid they would be defeated by you in one fell swoop. No wonder you are so confident in taking down the divine wilderness great world, even though you know that there is a great divine in the divine wilderness great world. The only thing you are worried about is that I will not appear at all, and will constantly harass you and affect your rule of the divine wilderness great world. That's why you did not invade the divine wilderness great world with all your strength before you saw me. Your actions can be called cautious, but unfortunately, you met me. After Tsing Hui finished speaking, he looked at the new great Tao law that was the combination of Yin and Yang power, and walked towards it without hesitation. Tao gives birth to 1, 1 gives birth to 2, 2 gives birth to 3, and 3 gives birth to all things. The so-called 1 gives birth to 2 is the power of Yin and Yang. The power of Yin and Yang is the power of Yin and Yang. The Torch Dragon and Serene Glow were also known as the 2 Yin and Yang saints, the head of the 12 divine beasts. Unfortunately, you met me. My coalescence great Tao is the source of Yin and Yang, and happens to completely restrain your great Tao law, so. As he spoke, Tsing Hui's figure had already walked into the range of Lord of Tao Clearwater's great Tao law. As the various characteristics of his coalescence great Tao erupted, the power of the coalescence great Tao, which could turn complexity into simplicity, constantly devoured and annihilated the power of laws formed by the Torch Dragon and Serene Glow, transforming them into the power of the coalescence great Tao. This. Sensing that her great Dao law was constantly being simplified and refined by Tsing Hui, Lord of Dao Clearwater's expressions suddenly changed. What kind of great Dao law is this? If you cultivate the other two great Dao laws, it is unknown whether I can defeat you with my full strength. Unfortunately, you chose the Sun Torch Dragon and the Moon's Serene Glow. Tsing Hui looked calm. Not to mention that Lord of Dao Clearwater had yet to completely integrate the Torch Dragon and Serene Glow Great Dao laws into one, even if he had already refined these two Great Daos into the Yin and Yang Great Dao. He was still no match for Tsing Hui's Coalescence Great Dao. Wherever Tsing Hui went, Lord of Dao Clearwater's two Great Dao laws were instantly defeated, and it was almost impossible for them to fight against him. In just a short while, Tsing Hui had already taken one step after another and arrived less than 100 kilometers away from Lord of Dao Clearwater. Lord of Dao Clearwater's expression changed when he saw this, and he finally quickly withdrew his Great Dao Law. His opponent had easily gotten within 100 kilometers of him while carrying his power of laws of the Great Path. This could be said to be a crushing defeat. If it had been a battle of life and death, his opponent would have been able to directly destroy his true body and put him in danger of dying. You've already refined the Great Dao Law that the Divine Beast Kuan Peng and the Divine Beast Chaos bloodlines represent into one? Is it really so powerful when the bloodlines of these two divine beasts are fused into one? As far as I know, those legendary peak existences who have fused 7 types of Grand Dao laws into one can only fight on par with 20 to 30 supreme experts if they don't use a creation divine artifact that is completely compatible with them. You've only fused 2 types of Grand Dao laws. Lord of Dao Clearwater's expression changed. In the next second, he seemed to have thought of something and suddenly wanted to speak, but he forcefully swallowed the words back. Because once he really said that guess, he suspected that Tsing Hui would choose to silence him in order to keep it a secret. Judging from the strength displayed by his opponent, he already had the ability to silence him. So, you admit defeat? Tsing Hui asked. Lord of Dao Clearwater was silent for a moment and finally nodded. I admit defeat. I will serve you for 10,000 years as we agreed. Good. Tsing Hui felt some subtle changes in the interface of the Son of Chaos and immediately understood that the Chaos Oath had taken effect. For powerful experts, the Son of Chaos interface did not provide much help, but it did not have any effect. There was at least a 20 to 30% difference in cultivation between the Son of Chaos interface and the Son of Chaos interface. Although it did not seem much, at certain critical moments in a battle of life and death, 10% of one's battle strength could determine life and death, let alone 20 to 30%. He believed that as long as he did not exploit Lord of Dao Clearwater in every possible way, or even put his life in danger, he would be able to obtain the help of this expert who was equivalent to 2 or 3 ordinary powerful experts in these 10,000 years. All right, let's go back now, Tsing Hui said with a smile. Lord of Dao Clearwater saw this and helplessly followed Tsing Hui. The punishment of being stripped of all the chaos ranks and being unable to become a son of chaos for life was too severe. In addition, 10,000 years was indeed not a long time. Although he was not used to being controlled by others, he still decided to endure this 10,000 years patiently. Chapter 890. They're here. The Liha Swordmaster, who was waiting in the endless void, immediately noticed the abnormality in the depths of the void and quickly looked towards the depths of the void. There, Tsing Hui and Water Lord Qingshui were like 2 mortals, walking on the Dao and quickly approaching. Looking at the two, the Liha Swordmaster's eyes immediately fell on the expression of Water Lord Qingshui. When he noticed that her expression seemed to be a little gloomy, he suddenly guessed something and could not help but show a trace of surprise on his face. It seems that Sword God Tsing Hui won? If the Green Ruins Sword God wins, that would be for the best. Hurry up, let's go up and ask. No, Sword God Tsing Hui is a great divine. How can she face Sword God Tsing Hui if she lost? I think it's better to wait for Sword God Tsing Hui or Water Lord Qingshui to say it themselves. As the several sword masters spoke, they still went up to greet them at the fastest speed. Greetings, Sword God, Tao Lord. Coming in front of the two, the sword masters of the Void Sword Pavilion hurriedly saluted. Even the Tsangjia Sword Master was no exception. This was the respect for the Great Divine, and no one dared to violate it. Xing Hui nodded and met their expectant eyes. He did not disappoint and said, "From now on, Tao Lord Qingshui is one of us. Don't worry." Hearing this, the Liha Sword Master immediately understood that Xing Hui was the final winner and immediately breathed a sigh of relief. Well, let's go back to the divine wilderness great world. I have something to ask you. Sword God Xing Hui, please tell us. Does the Void Sword Pavilion keep in touch with any great divine? Or do you know any great divine with a good reputation? Great divine? The Liha Sword Master and the other Sword Masters looked at each other, weighed for a moment, and then said cautiously, "The Void Sword Pavilion has made a lot of contributions in the past. Some of our friends who fought with the Void Sword Pavilion have broken through to the Great Divine level in the past hundreds of thousands of years. In addition to the previous relationships, there are 3 Great Divine with whom we keep in touch and have a good relationship." 3? Upon hearing this number, Xing Hui's eyes lit up slightly. "Very good. Can you introduce me? That shouldn't be a problem. I believe that those lords wouldn't mind getting to know another sword god." The Liha Sword Master said. Xing Hui nodded with satisfaction. At the same time, he turned to Tao Monarch Clearwater and asked, "Do you have any trustworthy or reputable almighty masters?" Lord of Tao Qingshui glanced at Xing Hui and asked in confusion, "I want to know why Sword God Xing Hui is looking for these great masters." "By chance, I've learned the whereabouts of a divine master. This divine master is currently deep in the territory of our Master of Chaos and seems to be up to no good. I'm currently lacking a handy divine weapon, so I'm thinking of gathering enough divine masters to intercept and kill this divine master." Divine master? Lord of Tao Qingshui's expression changed slightly. When a divine master travels, he is usually accompanied by a divine system. If you want to kill a divine master, you have to defeat his divine system. To defeat a divine system, you need at least 8 to 10 great divine masters. As for ensuring that the divine master is killed, you need more great divine masters. The two of us may be comparable to 6 or 7 ordinary great divine masters, but we're still a little short of defeating a divine system and even killing a divine master. If you want to ensure that nothing goes wrong, you do need 1 or 2 strong helpers. Yes, I wonder if Lord of Tao Qingshui has any channels? Lord of Tao Qingshui glanced at Xing Hui, pondered for a while, and directly transmitted her voice to him. Since Sword God Xing Hui is also a person who cultivates 2 great Tao laws, he must be someone who is unwilling to be left out. After I cultivated 2 great Tao laws, I joined a secret organization. The organization is full of masters like us. If Sword God Xing Hui doesn't mind, I can recommend Sword God Xing Hui to join. If Sword God Xing Hui can get the help of any one of them, the encirclement of the Divine Master will be successful. Secret organization? Xing Hui's heart skipped a beat. He vaguely guessed something. Due to the uniqueness of the chaotic creature, the Master of Chaos's degree of control over the creatures in the territory was far inferior to that of the Master of Time and the Master of Gods. Cultivators below the level of great divine masters who still had channels to ascend were naturally in awe of the Master of Chaos. However, after reaching the level of great divine masters, the path to ascend had been cut off. The power that cultivators gained from their cultivation was even fed back to the 12 divine beasts. How could the great divine masters, who were known as the children of destiny, accept this? Therefore, although these great divine masters still believed in the Master of Chaos on the surface, at least 1/10 of them were already ready to move. The number of great divine masters in the territory of the Master of Chaos was much more than that of the Master of Gods. Even 1/10 of them was probably 200 to 300. If these 200 to 300 top existences really formed a secret organization, it was completely reasonable. If it's feasible, I'd be happy to. Well, when you're free, I'll take you to the organization's contact point. Xing Hui wanted to go immediately, But considering that Lord of Dao Qingshui's organization must be extraordinary, his chaos great Dao power could hide from Lord of Dao Qingshui, but it was not necessarily able to hide from the organization's verifier. He immediately changed his mind. I do need to arrange many things in the divine wilderness great world. In the end, he said again, however, before that, in order to ensure the safety of the divine wilderness great world, can I ask Lord of Dao Qingshui to leave a great Dao imprint outside our divine wilderness great world with me? Although Lord of Dao Qingshui had only served Xing Hui for 10,000 years, he was too embarrassed to have any ideas about the divine wilderness great world after this defeat. It was not a big deal to leave a great Dao imprint outside the divine wilderness great world, and he could also form a good relationship with Xing Hui. He immediately said, sure. After that, he glanced around. This place is not far from the divine wilderness great world. Shall we leave a great Dao imprint here? But after Xing Hui finished speaking, he said to the Liha sword master and the others, we need to leave a great Dao imprint here. Step back a little. When the Liha sword master, the clear sky sword master, and the others heard this, a smile appeared on their faces. Sword God Xing Hui and Lord of Dao Qingshui will leave a great Dao imprint at the same time. The divine wilderness great world can be said to be safe from now on. The others also nodded in agreement. The divine wilderness great world's production of great Dao items was indeed enough to tempt a great divine ability expert. However, after knowing that the divine wilderness great world already had a great divine ability expert overseeing it, the great divine ability experts from outside would rarely pester it. Now that there were two great divine ability experts who had left a great Dao imprint outside the divine wilderness great world, even if there were great divine ability experts who wanted to pester it, they would have to consider the consequences of offending two great divine ability experts. At that moment, under the witness of the Liha sword master and the others, Xing Hui and Lord of Dao Qingshui once again left their great Dao imprints outside the divine wilderness great world one by one. With the formation of two great Dao imprints that were much larger than before, the divine wilderness great world had completely entered an era of stable development. Even if a great divine ability expert personally came, after witnessing the two great Dao imprints, they would not dare to have any ideas about the divine wilderness great world. After leaving the imprints, Xing Hui informed the Liha sword master and the others, and at the same time, came to the divine wilderness great world with them. In the divine wilderness great world, the Void Sword Pavilion had reopened the world transmission array between the Void Sword Pavilion and the True Sun Great World 100 years ago in order to ensure that there would be a steady stream of reinforcements from the Void Sword Pavilion. In this regard, Xing Hui did not say much, nor did he stop them. The current divine wilderness great world was no longer the same as before. There were two great divine ability experts who had left their great Dao imprints, and the Liha sword master of the Void Sword Pavilion was also a guarantor. From now on, the Void Sword Pavilion would definitely leave a sword master level figure to guard the divine wilderness great world at all times to ensure the safety of the divine wilderness great world. With such a guarantee, opening the world transmission array of the divine wilderness great world to the outside world was nothing. After arriving at the divine wilderness great world, Xing Hui met the elders of the Hunyuan sword sect. After learning that they were all working hard, he did not disturb them too much. Then, he also deliberately began to cultivate in seclusion, using the power of the fortune jade to deduce and simulate the great Tao law corresponding to the divine beasts of chaos. Relying on the characteristics of the chaotic life and the magic of the fortune jade, it took him a year to master the great Tao law corresponding to the divine beasts of chaos. After getting ready, Xing Hui called Lord Qingshui, and along the transmission array, they soon arrived at the True Sun Great World. After 1,000 years of recuperation, the True Sun Great World had recovered from the trauma when it was invaded. Although it had not yet recovered to its heyday, it was still thriving. Xing Hui did not disturb the True Sun Great World too much. With the help of the True Sun Great World as a transit station, he was directly transmitted to the outside world, and then through two other great worlds, he finally came to the famous Vast Great World. Although the Vast Great World was not the commercial center, military center, political center, or any other important great world in the territory of the Master of Chaos. It was a cultural center in the territory of the Master of Chaos, and also had an extremely amazing reputation. And to be able to become the center of a domain among the hundreds of millions of great worlds in the territory of the Master of Chaos, the vast great world naturally had a foundation that far surpassed the divine wilderness great world, the true sun great world, the Kuan dragon great world, the illusion great world, the northernmost great world, and other great worlds. Not only did the entire world's territory reach an astonishing 30 billion kilometers, but there was also a layer of space shackles constructed by the heart of the world inside and outside the world. This layer of space shackles was nothing to the great divines who could transform their bodies into Tao, but to the cultivators below the Dominator realm, it had a serious restrictive effect. If one did not go through a special door, even a chaotic realm supreme would have to spend a lot of effort to tear the space law and travel through the vast great world, and cause a huge fluctuation. By the time he finally managed to open up the void passageway, the enforcers of the vast world had already surrounded him. What awaited him was a trial of death, where he would be reduced to ashes and scattered ashes. As soon as Tsing Hui stepped into the vast great world, he immediately sensed the extraordinariness of this great world. In his senses, there were already several Dominator realm figures who had cultivated the Origin's sacred body and formed a self-circulation cycle. As for the chaotic realm supreme, there were hundreds of them. Its power was countless times stronger than that of the true sun great world, the divine wilderness great world, the northernmost great world, and the Kuan dragon great world. It really deserves to be called the cultural center of a great world. The cultural center of a world that has nothing to do with war is already so powerful. What are the other central worlds like? Sword God Tsing Hui, if you're interested, you can go and take a look. At our cultivation level, the world is so big that we can go anywhere we want. Water Lord Qingshui said with a smile. The world is so big that we can go anywhere we want. Tsing Hui secretly shook his head when he heard what Water Lord Qingshui said. The great divines might be safe in the territory of the Master of Chaos, but it might not be the case in the three domains, not to mention that there was an even vaster chaotic void outside the broken immortal Tao civilization world occupied by the three domains. If the great divines who were not chaotic beings went to the chaotic void, even if a war did not break out, they could only survive for a few hundred years. It was already difficult for them to survive, let alone travel to their heart's content. Water Lord Qingshui obviously did not know what Tsing Hui was thinking. She just said, "Come with me, I'll take you to the stronghold of our organization and contact them." Chapter 891. Lord of Tao Qingshui was a great medium. Although he was a new great medium, there were only 1,000 or 2,000 great mediums in the entire territory of the Master of Chaos. Even though he had broken through less than 100 years ago, his reputation could still spread throughout the territory of the Master of Chaos at an extremely fast speed. Even the high-level forces such as the Master of Time and the Master of Gods knew about him. Under such circumstances, when he came to the vast world, even though he did not deliberately inform anyone, there was still a Dominator who had cultivated the immemorial sacred body who came from afar to welcome him. Miao Wia, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of the vast world. Greetings, Tao Qingshui. It's an honor for you to come to our vast world. Alright, we're just here to visit a few old friends. You don't have to accompany us. Go about your own business. Lord of Tao Qingshui waved his hand. Miao Wia listened and bowed respectfully. He handed over a jade talisman and said, "This is my communication jade talisman. If you have any instructions, just send me a message. I'll be there immediately and do my best to serve you." Lord of Tao Qingshui did not want it, but Tsing Hui said, "Here, I need to look up some information. I may need this gentleman's help." Lord of Tao Qingshui listened and took the jade talisman. Miao Wiya's heart skipped a beat when he heard the casual conversation between Tsing Hui and Lord of Tao Qingshui. He originally thought that Tsing Hui was a stranger. He was not a great medium that he was familiar with, nor did he have a similar aura among the famous dominators. Therefore, he subconsciously thought that Tsing Hui was the root of Lord of Tao Qingshui. But now, that was obviously not the case. Judging from the attitude of the two of them, even though there was a difference in status between the two of them, it was definitely not that big of a difference. At once, Miao Weia hurriedly bowed once more. "Greetings, Your Excellency. Please forgive me for my negligence earlier. This is an 8th grade card from our Boundless Worlds Wuji library. With this card, Your Excellency can access all the Jade books and books from the 800th to the 899th level of the Wuji library." Xing Hui listened and took the Jade card with a smile. "Thank you. What's the use of an 8th grade card? Isn't the card in my hand also an 8th grade card? If Sword God Xing Hui really wants to find out something, why don't you just use my card to do it?" Sword God Xing Hui. When Miao Weia heard Lord of Dao Qingshui address Xing Hui with an honorific, he immediately understood that he was probably also a great medium. However, this great medium kept a low profile, or perhaps he had just ascended not long ago, which was why his name was not circulated in the outside world. He quickly recorded this information and said bitterly, "Forgive me, Dao Lord. It's not that I don't want to give Xing Hui the 9th level Sword God card, but my authority allows me to only give cards of this level. If Sword God Xing Hui is willing, could you please follow me to the Realm Lord Manor? Only a few Sector Lords and Vice Sector Lords have the qualifications to issue 9th level cards. Which Sector Lord is on duty now?" asked Lord of Dao Qingshui. "It's Realm Lord Huai Jin." "Huai Jin? I'll pay him a visit when the time comes, but not now." Then, Lord of Dao Qingshui ignored Miao Weia and said to Xing Hui, "Let's go." Then, the two of them shuttled and went straight into the depths of the vast great world. Seeing Xing Hui and Lord of Dao Qingshui leave, Miao Weia carefully memorized Xing Hui's appearance and aura. They had to record the information of a newly born great medium as soon as possible. At the same time, they had to form a detailed blueprint based on the original information about him in the database. This was the responsibility of the vast great world, and it was also the way of survival of the vast great world. Its nature, it was vaguely comparable to the divine secret pavilion. However, the vast great world's forces were limited, and they did not dare to sell information about those top existences publicly. Otherwise, it would infuriate those top experts, and it would not be difficult to destroy the vast great world. Lord of Dao Qingshui brought Xing Hui directly to a courtyard in the vast great world. Compared to the true Sun Great World and the Divine Wilderness Great World, there was almost no barren land in the vast great world. Any mountain, river, or ocean was almost set up with formations. Although these formations were of different levels, it was enough to prove that these places were owned. In addition, the vast great world had good public security. As long as they lived in these occupied places, their property would be well protected. For example, the courtyard that Xing Hui came to was actually a mountain range with a diameter of tens of thousands of kilometers. The entire mountain range was enveloped in an 18-level formation, and its momentum was obviously much stronger than other places. Lord of Dao Qingshui landed and struck a spell. The gate of the courtyard opened, and she brought Xing Hui directly into the courtyard. As soon as he stepped into the courtyard, Xing Hui immediately felt a trace of unusualness. This is a transit space created by a great divine master from a world dominated by a great divine master. Wait a moment, someone will come to verify your aptitude. However, although this Great Development Gate is an organization, it is actually a secret communication platform. As long as you don't betray the interests of the Great Development Gate, there is basically no restriction on the disciples. Otherwise, I wouldn't have joined this force. The Great Development Gate. Xing Hui nodded. You can't hide your identity in the Great Development Gate. Speaking of this, Lord of Dao Qingshui paused slightly. The main thing is that what we are doing is contrary to the mainstream of cultivation in the territory of the Master of Chaos. After all, the Great Master of Chaos still hopes that we can transform our bodies into Dao and provide power for those divine beasts so that they can transcend early and become great existences. However, what we are doing is to get rid of his control. Naturally, we can't do it openly. This method of exposing our identity has indirectly forced us to be in the same boat. Of course, I personally think that the main problem is that someone betrayed the interests of the Great Development Gate and made it easier to hunt them down. You can't do it openly? Xing Hui was slightly startled, but in my opinion, your secrecy doesn't seem to be very good. That's in your opinion. Because of your current stage, there is no need for me to deliberately hide it from you. In fact, more than half of the Great Divine Masters know about the existence of the Great Development Gate. Many people even want to join the Great Development Gate and join this organization where the strongest gather. Unfortunately, the standard to join the Great Development Gate is to cultivate 2 types of Tao laws. However, not every Great Divine Master can have this kind of opportunity. Thus, until today, the Great Development Gate's members are only a little more than 160 people. A little more than 160 people. This number was much less than what Xing Hui had imagined. Not allowing these people to join, will it cause trouble? Of course not. Do you really think that the Great Development Gate could be established without the tacit consent of the Master of Chaos? The Master of Chaos is not in control of his own territory, but it shouldn't be to this extent, right? From time to time, he will deliberately pay attention to the dozen or so Great Divine Masters who are most likely to break through. The Master of Chaos acquiesced. When Xing Hui heard this, he was startled at first, but after a while, he understood. More than half of the 12 divine beasts had fallen. Although he did not know the cause of their fall, the Master of Chaos's plan had obviously failed. Now, the Great Divine Masters that he had cultivated wanted to use a similar method to condense the true body of the primordial plate to break through the shackles and become great beings. He naturally wanted to use this method to see if these people could succeed. Thus, he chose to tacitly consent to the existence of the Great Development Gate. This might be the tacit understanding between the Master of Chaos and those top Great Divine Masters. Just as Tao Monarch Clearwater and Xing Hui were talking, a middle-aged man suddenly appeared in the transit station. Tao Monarch Clearwater. Realm Lord Formless. Seeing this middle-aged man, Tao Monarch Clearwater bowed. At the same time, she introduced him to Xing Hui. This Realm Lord Formless is our Great Development Gate's 6 marks deacon. After saying that, he added, every time you integrate a type of great path, you'll gain 1 more pattern. A 6-pattern deacon is equivalent to having already fused 6 types of great path precepts. You only need to condense 1 more pattern to enter the pinnacle of the world of great path precepts, and you'll be known as an ultimate great master. Is this the new member that you recommended to join our Great Development Gate? Realm Lord Formless' gaze landed on Xing Hui. Yes. Then let me see your great Tao laws. Realm Lord Formless was obviously a straightforward person and went straight to the point. Okay, but I am not familiar with the fusion of great Tao laws. Thus, I can only do it one by one. You see, I am not familiar with the fusion. Tao Monarch Clearwater felt a little strange. Xing Hui could use great Tao laws in actual combat. How could he not be familiar with it? However, when she thought of that terrifying guess, she did not say anything. Realm Lord Formless did not mind these details and only made an inviting gesture. Then, Xing Hui demonstrated the great Tao laws of the Divine Beast Kuan Peng and the Divine Beast Chaos. He had purposefully disguised these 2 laws. Even though the formless Realm Lord before him was one of the best among great experts, he was still on the same level as the Green Ruins realm after all. Due to the characteristics of the Green Ruins realm as a chaotic life form, his level of existence even slightly surpassed the formless Realm Lords, so the formless Realm Lord obviously failed to see through his disguise. Very good. Although you have 2 great Tao laws, because your great Tao laws have not been completely fused, I can only give you a 1-mark identity. When you have fused the 2 great Tao laws into one, you can apply for a 2-mark identity. Realm Lord Formless said. Xing Hui glanced at Tao Monarch Clearwater. Tao Monarch Clearwater immediately explained through voice transmission, 1 mark to 3 mark belong to the same level. Any higher is just a different position and responsibility. Anyway, even if you are promoted to 2 mark or 3 mark, you won't be able to take on any responsibilities. It won't affect you much. Tsing Hui listened and nodded to Realm Lord Formless. Thank you. Realm Lord Formless responded as a routine and asked for a spiritual imprint from Tsing Hui. Soon, he divided the spiritual imprint into two. One of them was refined into a golden pattern and gave to Tsing Hui. The other was kept and needed to be recorded in the Great Development Gate. Sword God Tsing Hui, now that you are also a member of the Great Development Gate, let me show you the demeanor of the top experts in the Great Master of Chaos territory. Chapter 892. Through the modified miniature world, Taoist Clearwater directly teleported with Qing Su over an extremely long distance. They directly appeared in a world that was not particularly large, or rather, could only be described as small. According to Tsing Hui's estimation, the diameter of this world was not more than 10 million kilometers. However, what surprised Tsing Hui was that in this world, he felt a familiar aura. This aura, this is the headquarters of our Grand Development Gate. Sword God Tsing Hui, do you feel that this world is unusual? Taoist Lord of Tao Clearwater smiled with a hint of showing off. Tsing Hui nodded. In fact, he had already guessed what was so special about this world. He immediately said, I heard that before the world of immortal Tao civilization was destroyed, there was a mystical world called Exalted Heaven. In that world, cultivators could directly face the laws of the great Tao and easily cultivate the origin sacred body and become a ruler. Could it be? Taoist Lord of Tao Clearwater looked at Tsing Hui with some surprise, but he still said truthfully, you guessed right. The headquarters of our Grand Development Gate was refined from a broken fragment of the Daluocean and named the Grand Development Gate. The Grand Development Gate is located at the border between the territory of the Great Lord of Chaos and the Chaotic Void. Only in this way can the Grand Development Gate gather chaotic vitality and form a special environment that can help a dominator break through to become a great medium. At this point, he said with some regret, it's a pity that it's too expensive to exchange for a place to cultivate in the depths of the Grand Development Gate. Even with my current status, it would take me tens of thousands of years to accumulate one. Otherwise, I could choose some talented juniors and disciples and train them well. If they're lucky enough to reach the Dominator realm, the influence of our sect will expand again. Tsing Hui nodded. He was very surprised that a part of the Daluocean of the immortal civilization was in the hands of the Grand Development Gate. After a while, he seemed to have noticed a trace of abnormality and suddenly said, didn't you say that the Grand Development Gate only has 160 members? But from what I see, there are more than 16,000 cultivators here. Of course, there are only 160 official members. However, the subordinates and followers that these official members bring with them are naturally more than that. If we really want to count the population, the entire Great Development Gate would be more than 100,000 people. However, these 100,000 people are all there to serve us, the official members. Although the essence of the Great Development Gate has been sealed by the Gate Master and the Elders, even if a trace of it escapes, it would be immeasurably beneficial to those below the Sovereign Realm and even to the Sovereign Realm. In fact, as long as you, Tsing Hui, are willing, I believe that there will be many great divine ability masters coming to your door, hoping to send their promising juniors to become your followers and serve you, all for the opportunity to live and cultivate in the Great Development Gate. Many powerful beings have come knocking, yes. Any one Vein Elder can recruit 100 servants. Above that, a 2-Vein Elder can recruit 200 servants, a 3-Vein Elder can recruit 300 servants, and a 4-Vein Elder can recruit up to 1,000 servants. What about 7, 8, or even 9 or 10 veins? What about 9 or 10 veins? Lord Qingshui shook her head. The 6 divine beasts have only fallen for a few 100,000 years. If it weren't for the strong foundation of those great divine ability masters and the legacy left behind by the 6 divine beasts, it would be amazing for them to be able to refine 5 or even 4 great divine beasts in a few 100,000 years. Currently, the strongest people in the Great Development Gate are the Gate Master, who has refined 8 great divine beasts, and 5 elders who have refined 7 great divine beasts. These 6 people are the true strongest in the territory of the Lord of Chaos. They are much stronger than those who rely on the divine creation weapon to climb to the title of ultimate expert. Ultimate expert. Xinghui had heard of this saying a long time ago. Immortals and ultimate gods were sayings passed down from the Master of Chaos and the Master of Gods. In the Master of Time's lineage, there were also immortals. However, their so-called immortals had obvious shortcomings, which was that their individual combat power was too weak. In large-scale battles, the combat power that these immortals could display was more terrifying than the immortals. However, in a normal one-on-one battle, an immortals could probably defeat 3 or 4 immortals. How many ultimate experts are there in the Great Development Gate? It's obvious that there are only 6 ultimate experts. As for those who rely on creation artifacts to barely have the combat strength of an ultimate expert, there are also a few. Most of them are top-tier ultimate experts. At this point, Tao Lord Qin Shui explained, because the gap between the Great Divine Ability Realm and the 4th tier of the Chaos Realm is too great, people have divided this realm into 4 stages according to combat strength. The first stage is naturally the ordinary Great Divine Ability Realm. Half of the Great Divine Ability Realm's thousands of Great Divine Ability Realm experts in the Lord of Chaos territory belong to this stage. The rest are the experts among the Great Divine Ability Realm experts who can fight 1 against 3 ordinary Great Divine Ability Realm experts. People like the two of us who have fused 2 Great Tao Laws and those old Great Divine Ability Realm experts belong to this stage. The third stage is the top-tier Great Divine Ability Realm experts. Tao protectors who have creation artifacts and cultivators who have fused more than 4 Great Tao belong to this stage. Only the Great Development Gate's Gate Master, Elders, and those top-tier Tao protectors who have custom-made creation artifacts belong to this stage. 4 to 6 vein-level experts who have creation artifacts are barely comparable to ultimate experts and Tao protectors. Tao protectors referred to those cultivators who constantly increased their strength without regard for their future. These cultivators existed in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd tier of the Chaos Realm, but in different forms. They were unable to break through to the next realm, so they could only choose to continue accumulating strength in this realm. Don't the Great Development Gate's Gate Master and Elders have custom-made creation artifacts? A custom-made creation artifact is different from an ordinary creation artifact. Tao Lord Qin Shui shook her head. A custom-made creation artifact is, in fact, fusing one's own Tao with the creation artifact. At that time, rather than calling the cultivator a cultivator, it would be better to say that he has transformed into a creation artifact. He is equivalent to the creation artifact's artifact spirit, power source, and so on. How can a cultivator who wants to break through the shackles and look up to the 4th tier of the Chaos Realm accept this? Refining oneself into an artifact spirit. Xinghui's expression was a little strange. A custom-made creation artifact, not everyone was able to accept it. However, thinking about it carefully, when one reached the realm of great divination, was one's life form really important? So what if one's life essence became something like an artifact spirit? With the means of great divination, changing one's appearance was a piece of cake. As Tao Lord Qin Shui and Xinghui spoke, they had already arrived at a mountain peak. The mountain peak was currently under the protection of a restriction, but this restriction was mainly for concealment, and its defensive power was ordinary. In fact, the Master of Chaos's understanding of formations up to the 21st level was no longer useful. Almost no one could set up a formation that could allow a sovereign to defeat a powerful being. Even if a powerful being were to set up a formation, it would cost them countless resources. However, if a formation could increase a powerful being's battle prowess by 50%, it could already be considered a top-notch formation. These mountains have no aura and are all ownerless. You can choose to live in one of them. 1 vein to 3 vein great divination can live in similar mountains, regardless of height. With a mountain peak, you can recruit servants. Perhaps, you can use this as a condition to invite a few great divination experts to go with you to kill that divine master. After all, killing a divine master can be exchanged for a creation artifact. Although the power of a non-exclusive creation artifact isn't great, It's enough to allow a 2-vein or 3-vein great divination expert to have combat power close to that of a top-notch great divination expert. Dao Lord Qing Shui said. That's great. I'll open the mansion now. Do I need to send an invitation to the great divination experts around? There's no need at all. After you open your mansion, there will immediately be people coming to find you. You don't have to worry about this. The only thing you need to consider is not to give out all the spots in one go. Otherwise, when the time comes, you won't be able to let your descendants cultivate in the great expansion sky. Tsing Hui nodded and immediately imprinted his golden vein that had been refined by Formless Realm Lord onto the mountain's restriction. Suddenly, the restriction dissipated, and at the same time, all the information about the restriction's opening and closing surged into his mind, allowing him to understand it clearly. As the restriction was opened, Tsing Hui also saw a palace at the top of the mountain and many courtyards built at the bottom of the mountain. As the palace and courtyards were set up with formations, they looked spotless. With the area and buildings of the entire mountain peak, it was more than enough to accommodate hundreds of people. Not long after Tsing Hui and Dao Lord Qing Shui landed on the mountain peak, there were great divination experts who noticed the opening ceremony of the mountain peak. Not long after, a divine thought was transmitted. May I know which fellow Taoist is staying here? Saint Fan, the realm lord of the Brahma Heart Great World, is here to congratulate you. See, aren't they here now? Dao Lord Qing Shui said with a smile. There are many benefits involved in killing an ultimate god. It's much easier for them to beg you than for you to beg them. Tsing Hui nodded slightly. This method was indeed easier than him going up to them. Dao Lord Qing Shui's method has solved a big problem for me. Without further ado, let's invite the Realm Lord of Saint Fan in. Okay, I'll check for you. The place to live in the Dian Heaven is precious. It's not too wasteful to ask them to kill an ultimate god. Of course, if you want to monopolize the benefits after killing the ultimate god, it's a different story. That's not it. I can't afford to do anything to an ultimate god. Tsing Hui said as he invited the Realm Lord of Saint Fan in. I've just opened my residence and it's a shabby place. Tsing Hui is not a good host. Please forgive me, Realm Lord of Saint Fan. Tsing Hui said politely. The Realm Lord of Saint Fan smiled and said, I'm sorry for being presumptuous. I don't know if Tsing Hui needs to recruit servants. If so, the Brahma Heart World is willing to help. Just when Qing Su was about to speak, 2 more voices rang out from outside the mountain, one after the other. Congratulations on another fellow Taoist joining us. I'm Sun Li from the Jixia Great World. I mean Kongzi. I'm here to nag. Tsing Hui, who was worried that he would not be able to find enough great divination experts to kill Ultimate God Brilliant, was relieved when he heard these great divination experts coming one after another. He immediately said to the outside, Tsing Hui is honored to have all of you come to visit. Please take a seat inside. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.